The dark-haired man asks if the blonde princess has been thinking about going outside. She reacts with surprised confusion. He suggests that light exercise after a meal would be good for her health. A sudden, quick tap sounding as she claims she is a sinner who doesn't deserve the meal. She insists on taking more time for reflection instead of going out. He echoes her word with skepticism. He questions if her period of reflection has really lasted 2 weeks already. The man recalls her previously blaming the hot weather for her refusal to leave. He reminds her that she also blamed comic books for her last isolation. She laughs in nervous response. She questions the method of her reflection while he asks if she is being serious. She admits she simply prefers being in her room and doesn't want to go out. She regrets her sudden honesty. She claims her confinement is actually a self-punishment for damaging a precious book. He stares at her silently. The man jokes about appearing too harsh while she deflects with a nervous laugh. She claims a high conscience. Princess looks down with content modesty. She tells him even breathing near him feels sinful, which he encourages with a smile. She protests that he is trying to kick her out after telling her to stay. A delicious strawberry cake sits ready. She sneaks away while announcing her return to her room as a sitter. Her dress ruffles catch the light. She claims she must leave because her guilt is too overwhelming. Well, that's one way to dodge a health talk, she thinks while fleeing with the cake. He calls out to stop her. A sudden, quick tap sounding as she finishes her sentence and shuts the door. She dives onto her large bed. She sighs in relief upon escaping. She celebrates the superior comfort of her bed. She hopes she can keep the food she packed without being chased. She acknowledges that the cake is very high in calories. She happily eats her stolen cake. She reasons that lying still will minimize her calorie consumption. Blackout curtains are mentioned as a key part of her ideal setup. High-calorie foods provide efficient energy for her stationary lifestyle. The room suits a homebody perfectly. She rests with a peaceful smile. She decides that this comfortable imperial confinement is actually perfect. She recalls the title of the novel she inhabited was Forced Empress. The original story involved a beautiful princess courted by a ruthless crown prince. That tragic heroine was eventually kidnapped and confined. She explains that she possessed a lowly extra instead of the main character. A heavy thud sounds as she collapses and begs for a single piece of bread. A loud crack sounds as April throws documents and yells at her. April demands that she finish her tasks properly. She identifies her cruel half-sister as April. She laments her role as a lowly extra. She endured 3 months of slave-like conditions in that mansion. The scratching of her pen sounds as she works through another night of overtime. A dark shadow looms over the blonde girl while she works. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap, sounding as a gloved hand suddenly covers her mouth. The dark-haired man in black tells Princess Lamea to be quiet if she doesn't want scars on her face while she makes a muffled sound. He then informs his allies that he has secured her and will knock her out for transport. A heavy thud sounds as she falls to the floor, screaming that she is not actually Princess Lamea. She reflects on the absurdity of dying from overwork only to be kidnapped while working overtime in a novel. Bound and trembling, she sells. Her hood is pulled back. She thinks to herself that dying in this way is far too unfair. A sudden, sharp ache sounds as she cries out that she is not Lamea Salt. Facing a tall man with black hair, she claims her status is merely that of a slave. The kidnapper realizes his mistake in sealing her mouth, which prevented her from correcting the misunderstanding. She begs for her life while several men watch her weep on the floor. The dark-haired man in the ornate suit asks what is happening. She is struck by the man's handsomeness, but notes he is not the blonde male lead from the novel. The kidnapper explains he brought her because she was seen using the princess's seal. The man with glasses and a monocle suspects she is lying about her identity to survive. She cries out that she was only following the princess's orders and fears for her life. She argues that being a slave and obeying orders should not be considered a crime. The men watch her with deep confusion. A small thought bubble reveals someone's uncertainty. The men whisper among themselves. A close-up reveals the dark-haired man's piercing green eye. He decides he will check her story personally. He orders the servant to be locked away and warns her to stay quiet to stay alive. The man in the suit walks away. She is relieved to have avoided a death flag, hoping it means she will live. Cobwebs hang in a neglected mourner. A rustle of fabric sounds. The blonde girl sits comfortably on a bed. She realizes she can finally sleep and have meals delivered without any effort. She enjoys a delicious fruit tart. She recalls how the pink-haired Princess Lamea took credit for her hard work in the shadows. A flashback reveals the princess throwing papers and calling her an illegitimate child. She remembers her former life, where her boss also berated her for overworking. She grips a stack of documents. She uses her knowledge of the novel to prepare for upcoming events. She finds the work easy since she knows the future. The pink-haired princess throws a tantrum because she couldn't answer questions from the elders. The blonde girl explains the importance of preparing for the people's well-being. The princess screams at her in a blind rage. She wonders why all her bosses are always angry with her. She rests in bed, noting her situation is the same in both lives. She sleeps peacefully among flowers. She wishes to live like this forever. A man holds a file. The dark-haired man identifies her as April Salt, the second princess, rather than a slave. She admits to her identity, but asks if he would believe her life as a slave. The man turns his back. She looks up at him nervously. The man smiles and asks why she doesn't try to make him believe her. The blonde girl looks on with a silent, contemplative expression. The dark-haired man folds his arms and questions her. She reflects on the Salt Kingdom's odd movements and how Princess Lemea's deft responses seemed like she was spying on the Cleton Empire. The Grand Duke admits that the princess's previous actions were incredibly irritating. He notes a change in recent days while reaching into his formal attire. A sudden, sharp realization hits the blonde girl as she stares in shock. He produces a trade certificate from the Salt Kingdom, leaving her to wonder why he possesses it. A sudden, quick rustle sounds as she snatches the document from him in surprise. She realizes the document was a preparation for the Cleton Empire's export halt. She realizes Lemea's foolishness in selling the documents would cause the kingdom's people to suffer. She questions why the empire is buying back wheat at a commission when they already have a massive surplus. She is startled when the man asks if there is a problem. She stands up and declares it a scam while he asks for her reasoning. She explains that the seal on the paper belongs to an unaccredited merchant group never used by the empire. She identifies the trade as a blatant scam intended to steal goods and commissions. She's caught off guard when he notes that only someone doing the actual work could tell so easily. The man with glasses whispers that a spy reported Lemea was actually indifferent to her duties, unlike what they believed. The Duke realizes the person who truly annoyed him was her, not Lemea, while she trembles in the corner. He tilts her chin up and prepares to question her further. He asks how she managed to uncover the Empire's secret scheme. He questions if she planted a traceless spy right under his nose while she struggles for words. She panics internally, knowing the information came from the original novel she read. She laments that she only wanted to save the citizens without changing the main plot. A soft, desperate whimper sounds as she claims she knows absolutely nothing. She begs to be let off, claiming she was simply following orders and working hard. He asks if she would choose death over revealing her homeland secrets. He assumes she is fiercely patriotic and walks away while she begs for her life. He asks if she knows the Empire's punishment for liars and criminals. He brandishes a small knife, explaining that the punishment begins with cruel torture. He threatens to tear her mouth open as she realizes he would never believe she is a transmigrator. She fears for her life and decides she cannot let her transmigration hit rock bottom. She strikes a dramatic pose, announcing she has one final thing to say. He listens as she claims she is someone who truly puts her all into her work. She pledges to work for free for life if he spares her, grinding her bones in his service. The Duke stares unimpressed as she makes her desperate presentation. He orders her to be taken away while she gasps in shock. The man with glasses informs her that lying to the Grand Duke carries a high price. He grins menacingly, promising she will be sent to a harsh environment. She screams as she imagines being sent to a terrifying torture chamber in the palace. She expects to be thrown into a dark dungeon filled with chains and torture devices. To her surprise, she is placed in a very comfortable room instead. She looks around the luxurious space in stunned silence. She finds the sun-blocking shutters even better than the blackout curtain she used to wish for. She questions if her diet will be simple and plain. She recalls her past life as a gamer living on snacks and decides this is no problem. A heavy thud sounds as she dives onto the bed, deciding the small room is perfect for her lifestyle. She nuzzles the pillow, declaring the situation a luxury for a homebody. She celebrates her imprisonment, happy that no one will bother her for a long time. A loud crash sounds as Lemea throws a tantrum in her own palace. Lemea fumes over the paperwork, unable to focus for even 10 minutes without help. The King of Salt laments that his sons died before they could even stop nursing, leaving him with no choice but to pin his hopes on Princess Lemea. The king tells Lemea it's time she fulfilled her role, explaining that rumors of the Empire's kidnapping attempt have the palace on edge, and seeing her working normally would reassure them. He continues, suggesting the work shouldn't be hard since she's had plenty of time to learn by observing April, while Lemea clutches her arm in silent distress. A loud thud sounds as Lemea slams her fist on a stack of books, shouting that no matter how hard she tries, she'll never be as smart as that girl. A sharp grit sounds as Lemea blames April for her current misery, seething that everything is the fault of that girl for getting kidnapped. A soft pew sounds as Lemea tries to exhale and calm herself down. A quick rustle sounds as she decides that reading a letter from her beloved Raiden will help her focus on the daunting task. Lemea smiles warmly at the letter, touched by Raiden's belief that she is the wisest and most beautiful woman on the continent. She reflects that while even reading the letter is difficult for her, the kind Raiden might still find a way to understand someone like her. She sets her mind to finishing her reply today, focusing intensely as she tells herself she only needs 2 more lines. Back at the Cleaton Empire, the dark-haired Grand Duke of Blair wonders if the girl he captured is still the same. His aide reports no signs of escape or resistance, noting that although she was the hidden power-wielding authority for Lamea, she seems to have adapted to her poor conditions surprisingly well. The aide explains with a small, frustrated sigh that she's enduring the confinement without a frown, as if she's enjoying it, though he's sure she won't last much longer since most nobles beg for release after 3 days. The Grand Duke considers reporting that the kidnapping failed, but that they succeeded in uncovering the truth instead. He recalls that the pink-haired Princess Lamea had the classic Salt Royal features, clear skin and pale blue eyes, and was considered incredibly beautiful. He remembers Crown Prince Raiden's obsession with Lamea was rooted in her perceived perfection, beauty, and talent. He concludes that if the captured woman's claims are true, then the one who actually fits the Crown Prince's tastes is someone else, and he orders the aide to report the kidnapping as a failure for now. A quick tap sounds as the aide reacts in shock when the Duke orders him to omit any mention of Princess April from the report. A heavy thud sounds as the Duke walks away, stating there's no need for the Crown Prince to know about her existence. A sharp crack sounds as flowers are pushed aside. A quick rustle sounds as the Duke stands by a window, looking out with a mysterious air. A sudden, faint smirk plays on his lips as he gazes into the distance. A quick scratch sounds as a hand finishes writing a document, leaving the writer to wonder what on earth is happening. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the blonde girl, April, stares at her work in disbelief, questioning why she is back to working. She realizes with a desperate cry that she thought being kidnapped and locked up meant she could finally rest, fearing her comfortable life was just a dream. A dark shadow looms as a voice mockingly asks if she really thought being reborn in a novel would magically fix her pathetic life as a mere extra. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as she sees a vision of Lamea, who tells her not to worry because her fate is the same. The vision of Lamea continues, claiming April is still destined to work herself to death in this life too. A sinister smile spreads across the vision's face as she promises April will be trapped in an office until her body gives out, buried under endless paperwork. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as April bolts upright in bed, realizing it was all a terrible nightmare about dying in vain once again. A frantic hasp sounds as she clutches her chest, breathless and relieved to find that her demise was only a dream. She sighs, thinking she deserves this for reading random books out of boredom, reflecting on the grim ending she just imagined. A quick tap sounds as her hand rests on a book, wishing she had a simple comic book to read instead of such dark stories. She reflects that if she had to complain about one thing, it's that she never even tried to escape her captivity and just blazed around all day. A quiet hum sounds as she looks up, noticing someone watching her. She wonders if the aide's frequent visits are a ploy to lower her guard, so she'll try to run, noting how laughably obvious the tactic seems. A sharp gasp sounds as the aide, appearing as a frightened cat-like shadow, shouts that he has sworn loyalty to the Grand Duke and begs her to stop tempting him, leaving her to wonder if she should just laugh at his overreaction. A sudden, quick rustle sounds as she asks about a new development, and the aide informs her that since she's so satisfied with the ducal estate, there's a price to pay. The aide explains that it's only fair that someone enjoying such luxurious accommodations should pay a proper price for them. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as gold coins rain down behind him, while he confirms that's the Duke's decision, leaving April completely confused. April stares in disbelief, questioning when being kidnapped and locked up became a paid experience, and skeptically asks what kind of price they're talking about. A quick rustle sounds as a waterfall of documents begins to tumble around her, catching her completely off guard. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the aide presents the documents, explaining they are for a dam construction project that has fallen behind schedule. He sternly informs her that her task is to review the cause of the delay and propose a solution. A quick rustle sounds as April clutches the papers, bewildered and questioning why an important task is being dumped on a captive like her. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as she recalls her own desperate promise to work herself to the bone for life if they just let her live. A quick tap sounds as the aide asks if she has anything else to say while she stands frozen, and she weakly replies that she does not. He casually adds that the deadline is in 2 weeks, leaving the consequence of failure to her imagination. A sudden, sharp glint shines from his glasses as he tells her he'll let her imagination fill in the rest of the punishment. An oppressive darkness closes in as she laments that she truly thought this would be a cozy, healing imprisonment. Holding a stack of papers, the blonde girl laments her fate as a kidnapped worker in a fantasy world. The brown-haired aide suggests to the dark-haired Duke that if she is responsible for the Empire's recent troubles, she might provide another brilliant solution, prompting the Duke to ask what happens if she fails. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the dark-haired Duke presses his hand onto a document, declaring that she will suffer the consequences if she has lied to him. A quick double knock sounds at the ornate door of the study. A quick rustle sounds as the brown-haired aide receives a sealed letter from another man. Watching the aide open the envelope, the dark-haired Duke expresses skepticism that she found a solution so quickly, assuming it must be a surrender. The brown-haired aide is surprised to find a request to send a letter to Ginevra Golbro in the Illimena Union instead of the expected confession. A heavy thud sounds at the dam construction site where exhausted commoners complain about the heat, poor food, and their long separation from home. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the workers spot a group of armed people approaching the construction site. A soft woo sounds as the brown-haired aide arrives at the site and lets out a relieved breath. Standing before the confused workers, the brown-haired aide introduces the Black Eagle mercenaries who have arrived to take over the dam project. The workers cry out in joy as the brown-haired aide explains that by the Grand Duke's order, they are all permitted to return home once they brief the newcomers. Tools are tossed into the air as the workers cheer enthusiastically for the Grand Duke and celebrate their departure. A quick tap sounds as a hand marks a clipboard, instructing that local women in need of work should be recruited as cooks. Walking through the palace, the brown-haired aide explains the plan to hire struggling widows and single mothers as kitchen staff to replace the manor workers. The brown-haired aide notes that this hiring strategy also satisfies a specific clause in the mercenaries' contract regarding provided meals. Surrounded by flowers, the blonde girl beams with a radiant smile. The brown-haired aide questions how she managed to secure the mercenaries, leaving the blonde girl looking puzzled. The brown-haired aide clarifies his confusion, asking how she hired a group that has historically only worked for the Kingdom of Salt. The blonde girl explains that the success is due to the Duke's actions, though the Duke himself appears confused by the credit. She reminds them that the Duke's previous tactic of tricking Salt into selling cheap wheat left their national finances in complete disarray. A close-up reveals the intricate red wax seal on a formal letter. She points out that Salt's financial crisis forced them to cut the mercenaries' pay, leaving the group desperate for any new employment. The blonde girl explains that she made an irresistible offer to Ginevra Golbro, the daughter of the mercenary group's owner and their chief negotiator. She reveals that she tailored the contract by removing disliked terms and adding a Grand Ducal seal for trust, making it impossible to reject. The blonde girl smiles knowingly when asked how she could be so certain her plan would work. A quick rustle sounds as she recalls the grueling all-nighter she spent writing hundreds of letters to the woman in the past to understand her mindset. The blonde girl concludes that she has met the 2-week deadline, leaving the brown-haired aide staring at her in stunned silence. With sparkling eyes, the blonde girl asks if she is finally allowed to return to her room. The brown-haired aide admits he is impressed by her experience and her clever idea to employ low-income residents. He reflects privately on her excellent organizational instincts and the quality of her work. The dark-haired Duke stands by a window in the dim light while the aide remains behind him. The dark-haired Duke admits that the handover was so professional that he actually learned something from watching her. The Duke mentions his growing curiosity, causing the brown-haired aide to ask what he is referring to. The dark-haired Duke wonders why someone as capable and intelligent as her hasn't made any attempt to escape. The brown-haired aide speculates that perhaps she is staying because she wants something specific from the Empire. The dark-haired Duke gazes out with a serious expression, wondering if she is seeking secret information about his country. The blonde girl looks up with a confused expression, as if she has no idea what they are discussing. A notification appears as the Duke decides to grant her one request in return for her help with the duchy's tasks. A soft smile plays on the dark-haired Duke's lips as he prepares to hear her request. A sudden, sharp glint shines in the Duke's green eye as he mockingly suggests she might want a tour of the mansion's high-end facilities. In her thoughts, the blonde girl dismisses the idea of a tour, satisfied with her current comfortable living quarters. The blonde girl asks if she can request something else entirely, and the Duke encourages her to speak her mind. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the blonde girl realizes this is her chance to finally get what she truly desires. She reflects that to reach the peak of a homebody's lifestyle, there is one essential item she is missing. A loud thud sounds as the blonde girl shouts with passion that she wants a room filled with comic books. The dark-haired Duke is taken aback by the request, and she confirms her desire with intense enthusiasm. A quick rustle sounds as she gestures dramatically, explaining that she finds the current books boring and misses reading comics. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the blonde girl suddenly realizes that in this novel world, the concept of comic books might not even exist. Despair washes over the blonde girl as she realizes the locals won't know what she's talking about, while the Duke calls out to her in confusion. The dark-haired Duke wonders if he can truly explain the concept of comic books and manage to obtain them within this novel's world. The blonde girl is filled with joy, wondering if she can finally upgrade her shut-in lifestyle in her new home. A group of distinguished men gathers in a grand, sunlit hall beneath an ornate chandelier. Looking at the newcomers with surprise, the blonde girl asks the brown-haired aide about the identities of these people. The brown-haired aide introduces the esteemed group, including Lord Brown, a former royal painter, and Academy instructors Lord Cedric and Lord Robid. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the brown-haired aide adjusts his glasses while explaining the purpose of their visit. The blonde girl is hit with a wave of shock upon learning the elite group has been assembled to produce a comic book. Sitting regally in a high-backed chair, the dark-haired duke waits for the girl's reaction. The dark-haired duke remains poised and composed, seated with his legs crossed in the quiet study. The dark-haired duke explains that he went to the effort of gathering the Empire's finest artists just for her. Overwhelmed by the gesture, the blonde girl is stunned that such top-tier professionals were hired for her personal entertainment. Gently lifting her face, the dark-haired duke notes that she still appears dissatisfied with the arrangement. A soft, shimmering sound follows as the dark-haired duke holds her chin and asks if there is anything more she desires. The dark-haired duke encourages her to speak her mind, but the flustered blonde girl insists that everything is perfectly fine. The dark-haired duke tells her to explain the project to the artists, leaving the blonde girl completely baffled. He clarifies that she is responsible for overseeing the comic book production, much to her continued disbelief. A highly detailed painting of red apples sits as a testament to the skill of the royal artists. The blonde girl frantically rejects the artwork, explaining that a realistic masterpiece is not what defines a comic book. She nervously suggests to Lord Brown that he should perhaps reduce the level of detail in his drawings. Nearby, Lord Cedric and Lord Robid get into a heated debate over whether an aggressive art style is merely a copy or a sign of evolution. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the blonde girl desperately explains that a simple, rough outline is enough and that the story is what truly matters. The artists are suddenly inspired by the concept of infusing a drawing with a narrative, praising it as a profound new form of art. The blonde girl lets out a nervous laugh, realizing that the artists have completely misinterpreted her point. A sudden, loud thud sounds as Lord Brown proudly presents a book detailing the great achievements of the first Duke Blair. The book claims the first Duke was born from an egg and breathed fire to slay monsters at the age of 5. As she flips through descriptions of the Duke creating bombs from pine cones, the blonde girl realizes this is just an exaggerated biography. Lord Brown eagerly asks for her opinion, noting the Duke specifically chose her to provide the final evaluation. A quick tap sounds as she holds the book, politely remarking that the quality is high and the story development is certainly impressive. The artists explain they poured their hearts into the work, believing the main character should possess overwhelming and undeniable power. Looking at the absurdly heroic illustrations, the blonde girl wonders if the Duke is punishing her for asking for a comic in the first place. The blonde girl stands up to address the group, prompting the confused artist to ask what she means. She firmly asserts that the primary purpose of any comic book should be pure entertainment. She asks the group if they honestly find the chronicle of the first Duke's achievements to be entertaining to read. Stunned, the artists argue that honoring achievements is the priority and that art made only for amusement is considered lowbrow. The artists claim they cannot waste their high-level skills on something meant for light entertainment, leaving the girl deep in thought. Surrounded by flowers, the blonde girl passionately argues that the true essence of art is to bring joy and happiness to others. A heavy silence falls over the room as she worries that her idealistic perspective might have sounded ridiculous to the professionals. Lord Brown is overcome with emotion, moved to tears by the girl's profound words about the nature of art. The painter reflects on how he had lost his way, using art to glorify himself rather than to delight his audience. The painter finally has an epiphany, realizing that art that entertains the viewer is the true soul of a comic book. Reinvigorated, the artists admit they are inspired by her insight and ask for her specific instructions on how to proceed. A quick rustle sounds as the blonde girl thoughtfully flips through the book to find a starting point. With a bright smile, she promises to provide them with a truly interesting story to bring to life. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as she points to a specific page, catching the interest of the artists. Lord Brown looks at the page and asks which of the artists was responsible for the rough sketches found there. A gloomy-looking apprentice named Ashley introduces herself, stating she was summoned as requested. The blonde girl warmly welcomes Ashley, confirming that she was indeed looking for the person who drew those specific sketches. Ashley timidly admits that she has never completed a full piece in 18 years and claims her skills are very poor. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Ashley panics, fearfully asking if she made a mistake on the parts she worked on. Weeping, Ashley explains that everyone mocked her bizarre sketches and told her she would be blamed if the project failed. The dark blue-haired woman apologizes for her involvement in the project, but the blonde girl firmly rejects her self-doubt. With a bright smile, the blonde girl declares that the woman's sketches were the only truly outstanding part of the comic book. The dark blue-haired woman is moved to tears as the blonde girl holds her hands and insists on the quality of her work. Highlighting a simplified drawing of an angel, the blonde girl explains that the panel layout and pacing were genuinely excellent. A soft, shimmering sound follows as the blonde girl calls out the name Ashley while maintaining a supportive grip on her hands. Looking determined, the blonde girl tells Ashley that she wants to entrust her with the most important role in the production. As Ashley stands alone in a sunlit hallway, her attention is caught by a sudden shout from behind. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as Barrymore, the brown-haired man, approaches and notes that Ashley was summoned by the lady. Mocking her, Barrymore asks if she was told to drop out of the project because of her poor skills. Looking down with a blush, Ashley quietly explains that the blonde girl asked her to handle the direction of the comic. Barrymore lets out a mocking laugh, ridiculing the idea that a pathetic apprentice of 18 years could manage direction. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as Barrymore suggests that direction is just a polite way of saying she is forbidden from drawing. Barrymore asserts that he will be taking on the main art role because he has always stood out among the apprentices. A cold, oppressive energy fills the hallway as Barrymore reminds Ashley that people like her do not last forever. Sneering, Barrymore predicts that without the lady's patronage, Ashley will be starving on the streets in no time. Barrymore and his colleagues laugh mockingly as they walk away, suggesting Ashley might only manage a tiny exhibition in 20 years. A soft, shimmering sound follows as the blonde girl's hands provide comfort to the discouraged Ashley. The blonde girl asserts that only Ashley has the capability to create the specific kind of comic book she has been dreaming of. With an encouraging expression, the blonde girl tells Ashley that she sees a talent in her that even Ashley didn't believe in. Ashley stands with a new sense of purpose and a gentle smile, holding her scrolls in the peaceful, floral corridor. Back in the grand study, the blonde girl asks the dark-haired Duke why he has called for her again. The dark-haired Duke mentions her busy schedule and asks if she needs anything else to help with her project. The blonde girl looks flustered and begins to hesitate while taking a sip of her tea. With a bright, cheerful expression, she asks if she could perhaps have an extra snack or two, something sweet or salty. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the dark-haired Duke pauses in surprise at her humble request for food. The dark-haired Duke is baffled that all she wants is a comic and snacks, while the girl begs him not to look at her like that. The blonde girl reflects on the stress of being summoned by him while the Duke asks if something is actually wrong. A quick rustle sounds as the dark-haired Duke gestures, stating he has something specific to give to the princess. The sound of footsteps echoes through the quiet room as someone approaches the seated pair. The blonde girl looks up with a shocked and confused expression at the newcomer's arrival. The dark-haired Duke remains composed as he confirms his intention to provide a gift to the princess. The sound of walking feet comes to a final stop as the visitor stands before him.
A red-haired maid appears with a radiant smile, enthusiastically greeting the young lady.
Looking bewildered, the blonde girl asks for her identity, and the maid introduces herself as Bonita, her new attendant. Bonita chatters incessantly, complimenting the girl's eyes and offering to be called by her name rather than a formal title. Overwhelmed by the intense extrovert energy, the blonde girl realizes the gift is actually another person. The dark-haired Duke smiles slightly and instructs the girl to tell Bonita if she needs anything from now on. In her thoughts, the blonde girl is frustrated that she received a person instead of a snack, but she politely thanks the Duke anyway. As they walk, Bonita chatters about the staff's curiosity and praises the blonde girl for being kind and gentle. Bonita mentions that a fellow maid named Marina was jealous of her assignment to serve the girl. While Bonita explains the girl's nickname as the suspicious young lady, the girl fears the Duke's intention is to burst her eardrums. A chibi Duke looms in her mind as she realizes Bonita is serving her under the pretense of watching her every move. The blonde girl stares blankly, realizing she has been caught in another one of the Duke's clever arrangements. Bonita asks with great excitement what their plans for the day are and how she can assist the young lady. The blonde girl laughs nervously, admitting she already has something specific on her mind. Pumping her fist with passion, Bonita encourages the girl to share her ideas immediately. Shaking with nerves, Ashley informs the group of artists that she has been assigned as the director for the work. Holding up a paper with a look of intense anxiety, Ashley explains that she has tried making a storyboard. Barrymore and another artist sit on a blue sofa, whispering skeptically about the quality of the new direction. Barrymore reacts with a sudden outburst of anger, demanding to know why a panel in the storyboard is just a background. The brown-haired man Barrymore lashes out at Ashley, mocking her artistic choices and questioning her basic skills. The other apprentices join in the ridicule, insisting that the senior artist should lead the group instead of someone like Ashley. As Ashley trembles in distress, the red-haired maid peeks through the door to witness the unfair treatment. Looking indignant, the red-haired maid observes the scene with clear frustration at the group's behavior.
The library stands silent as the narrative confirms the blonde girl's worst fears about the situation.
Returning to her lady, the red-haired maid angrily reports that the artists are completely disregarding her authority and mocking Ashley. The blonde girl reflects on her lack of standing among the professionals, realizing they view her as nothing more than a suspicious outsider. With a look of resolve, she decides she must find a way to enforce her will and protect her choices.
Standing tall amidst floral borders, she declares her intention to seek help from the Grand Duke himself.
A decorative title card marks a significant shift in the story's progression. The artists react with collective shock to the news that their leadership will be decided through a direct competition. The blonde girl smiles politely, acknowledging the difficulty the group has in accepting her recommendation of Ashley. She proposes that both Ashley and another artist create a work, with the superior creator taking the lead role. She gestures toward the group, asking for a fair way to judge the results without personal bias. The brown-haired man listens intently as she emphasizes the need for an objective and fair evaluation. She asserts that a judge whom everyone can respect must be the one to make the final decision. A sudden click sounds as a grand door opens to reveal the mysterious evaluator.
The dark-haired Duke arrives, his presence immediately dominating the room and capturing everyone's attention.
The brown-haired man is thrilled, seeing this as a perfect opportunity to outshine Ashley and gain the Duke's favor. The blonde girl asks the group if they agree to let the Grand Duke decide the winner of the competition. The brown-haired man eagerly accepts the challenge, while Ashley remains frozen in silent anxiety. Ashley is gripped by a heavy silence, her head bowed as the pressure of the upcoming contest sinks in. The Duke is surprised that her first personal request involves judging an apprentice contest, causing the blonde girl to tremble nervously. She is left stuttering and flustered as he questions the simplicity of her request compared to her usual demands.
Overwhelmed by her own nerves, the blonde girl wonders how she can possibly repay the Duke for his cooperation.
The Duke watches her closely, his sharp eyes focused on her every reaction during their conversation. She looks up at him with wide, pleading eyes, hoping for his continued support in her endeavor. The Duke tells her to remember this moment, leaving the girl confused and slightly panicked. He points out that she now owes him a significant favor in exchange for his participation, much to her shock. A dark aura surrounds the Duke as he smiles, already planning how he might use her debt to his advantage. The blonde girl is paralyzed with fear, imagining the terrifying consequences of being indebted to such a powerful man. The narrative reflects on the luck of setting the stage before the Duke could exert even more control. The other artists mockingly dismiss Ashley's chances, while she clutches her sketches in a moment of deep despair. A soft creak sounds as Ashley exits the room, looking completely defeated by the harsh words of her colleagues. Her gloomy thoughts are interrupted by someone calling out her name in the brightly lit hallway. Accompanied by her new maid, the blonde girl approaches and asks Ashley about her discouraged appearance. Ashley tries to deflect the concern, but the girl gently asks if she is struggling with her artistic duties. Ashley admits her fear that failing in front of the Duke will expose her as the fraud everyone believes her to be. She is heartbroken at the thought of embarrassing the only person who has ever truly supported her. The blonde girl explains that the Duke's validation will provide far more security than her own protection could ever offer. She looks directly at the doubting artist, urging her to place her trust in their shared vision. The blonde girl praises Ashley's persistence and talent, moving the discouraged woman to tears of relief and joy. Overcome with emotion, Ashley bows low, feeling unworthy of the profound respect being shown to her. The blonde girl watches her with a look of quiet understanding, knowing the weight of her struggles. She expresses regret for pushing Ashley into such a high-stakes situation so quickly. To comfort her, the blonde girl offers to share a personal story about her own life before they met. A hazy vision appears of a woman living a lonely, aimless life in a modern world, seeking comfort only in her own room. The girl points out that Ashley's journey is different because she has never stopped chasing her dreams. With a radiant smile, she tells Ashley that her hard work is admirable, even if the rest of the world has yet to see it. Ashley is moved to tears by the kindness, finally accepting that she is worthy of the respect she has been given. The blonde girl and Ashley sit together on the rug while a maid watches over them from behind. A narrative thought confirms the belief that Ashley's hard work will eventually be rewarded and shine. The dark-haired Duke instructs the gathered artists to review the works and choose their preferred bookband color. A soft, quick rustle sounds while the dark-haired Duke silently flips through the pages of a storyboard. A heavy silence falls as the blonde girl and the artists wait with bated breath during the evaluation. Another quick rustle sounds as Barrymore and Ashley observe the Duke's focused expression with visible apprehension.
The dark-haired Duke remains stoic and silent while he deeply considers the content of the work.
A sharp tap sounds as he points out his preference for the book adorned with a red bid. Holding the chosen work, the dark-haired Duke demands to know the identity of the person who drew it. A sharp tap sounds again as he gestures toward the red-banded book, asking for the name of the creator.
The dark-haired Duke repeats his inquiry, holding the book firmly as he awaits a response from the group.
Barrymore reacts with visible shock while Ashley is overcome with disbelief and silent tears.
The dark-haired Duke asks the other artists for their honest thoughts on which work is better.
A senior artist agrees that the red-banded book is superior and better suited for its intended purpose. The Duke observes that while the blue-banded work was decorative, it lacked the narrative momentum to keep a reader engaged. He dismisses the blue-banded book as a mere performance of technical skill that lacked driving force. The Duke notes that the red-banded book uses simple color and dynamic compositions to bring its black and white pages to life. Impressed by his insight, the blonde girl notes that he possesses a remarkably sharp eye for the comic medium. He concludes that the red-banded book is clearly designed with the reader's experience and perspective in mind. The Duke officially selects the red-banded book, leaving Barrymore stunned and Ashley in a state of emotional shock. A quiet swish sounds as he looks back to the group, asking again for the name of the author. Ashley stands amidst a flurry of petals, looking bewildered by the sudden validation of her talents. The dark-haired Duke asks Ashley if she currently has anyone providing financial support for her artistic work. After Ashley admits she has been funding herself, the Duke declares his intention to become her very first sponsor. Both Ashley and the blonde girl are stunned into silence by his unexpected and generous proposal. A low murmur of surprise ripples through the room as the Duke asserts that true talent deserves real opportunity. A sudden thud sounds as Ashley sinks to her knees, completely overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. Choking back tears, Ashley offers her deepest gratitude to Duke Blair for his life-changing support. The blonde girl watches the scene with a gentle and satisfied smile, happy for her friend's success. A shimmering pink energy fills the frame as the story moves forward in time. A narrative text confirms that Ashley has successfully taken the lead in directing the other apprentice artists. A soft scratching sounds as the artists work diligently under Ashley's talented and organized leadership. The senior artists admit they were mistaken about Ashley, noting that she has proven to be incredibly useful. A quick click sounds as a beautifully finished book titled Difficult Contents is presented to the blonde girl. With a racing heart, the blonde girl celebrates the long-awaited completion of their difficult adaptation project. She reflects on how perfectly the horror story she shared matched the unique drawing styles of the artists. A bright flash of light emanates from the book as the blonde girl excitedly prepares to see the final results. She is blown away by the incredible art quality and the perfect expression of the horror genre pacing. Ashley waits nervously, a heavy silence falling as she asks for the young lady's honest opinion. A sharp tap sounds as the blonde girl considers a company dinner before deciding that additional payment is a better reward. Radiant with joy, the blonde girl promises extra pay for the outstanding work, expressing her immense pleasure. A small girl sits alone, feeling a bit dejected after the long and tiring creative process. A tiny squeal sounds as the blonde girl decides she must immediately show the finished book to the Duke. The scene shifts back to the study as the blonde girl prepares to present the final work. Her heart pounds with anxiety as she contemplates asking the Duke for a very difficult and nerve-wracking favor. The dark-haired Duke looks stunning as he sits among blooming roses, carefully reviewing the new book. Terrified by the task ahead, the blonde girl worries about the consequences of making a significant request. She considers that while their first meeting was poor, he has recently shown a much softer side. She remains paralyzed by the fear that he might tease her or demand a strange form of payback. A quick rustle sounds as the Duke reads in silence while the girl stands nearby, lost in her gloomy indecision. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the dark-haired Duke captures her attention, noting that she seems to have something on her mind. He repeatedly demands she speak as she wonders how he knew and tries to dismiss her idea as a silly story. The blonde girl asks the Duke if he thinks the project could actually make some money. The dark-haired Duke is confused and asks her exactly what she means by that. A thought reflects that it's a waste for only one person to read such an incredible quality comic book. A narrative note laments that talented artists shouldn't fade into history without ever making a name for themselves. While the Duke looks at the book, the blonde girl hopes he can be a savior for talented people. She excitedly suggests selling the comic book so everyone in the Cleaton Empire can read it. The dark-haired Duke looks completely bewildered by her unexpected and ambitious business proposal. A quick rustle sounds as papers are thrown while a voice shouts about a dared blunder. King Burga of Salt Kingdom angrily asks if their heads are for decoration and berates them for missing the seal's shape. He continues his tirade, accusing them of letting a merchant guild seal of unknown origin pass without inspection.
He points out that the shipment vanished without a trace during its transport to Cleton.
A subordinate explains they only process documents approved by Princess Lamea while the king yells about skyrocketing wheat prices. A loud thud sounds as the king slams his fist, furious that anyone would drag his daughter into disgrace. The king orders the guards to take away the criminal who dared to insult the royal blood. Guards drag away the accused mayor. Princess Lamea stands in silence as the king orders everyone else to leave the room. King Burgess stands sternly and repeats his command that only Princess Lamea stays behind. Lamea apologizes to her father, admitting she pushed herself too hard and lost her judgment with work lately. A soft whimper sounds from the princess. The king thinks back to when April was around and such failures never happened a single time. He wonders if Lamea has grown complacent or if she is simply more useless than the illegitimate girl. Lamea promises to study hard and work even more, assuring her father it won't happen again. Soft rain falls on the garden. She wonders why something like this is happening to her. The princess collapses in the burden. A quick snap sounds as she tears at the grass, crying that she could never be like that girl. She imagines that if her mother was a lowly maid, she might have lived desperately and tried her best. A soft sob sounds as she laments why she, a noble princess, must suffer such humiliation. A sudden startle sounds as an off-panel voice calls out to the princess. A quick swish sounds as she frantically wipes her eyes and wonders who is approaching her. A sharp gasp sounds as her eyes go wide with shock. A tall figure approaches the princess.
The narrative text introduces her fiancé, a man named Mason Ravioli.
He is described as a wealthy and gentle gentleman whose only fatal flaw is his appearance.
Mason Ravioli observes that he's been a bit stressed from administrative lately.
A quick swish sounds as she turns to him, coldly asking the count what brings him to see her. He sheepishly mentions it has been some time since their informal engagement and suggests discussing their marriage. She rejects the discussion, citing diplomatic issues with Clayton, while Mason Ravioli acknowledges her decision. He bows and promises to respect her wishes before telling the princess to rest well. A steady rhythm of footsteps sounds as she walks away, thinking she would never marry an ugly man. Lamea dreams of breaking her engagement to become the wife of Raiden, the crown prince of Cleton. The blonde girl explains to the Duke that comic pictures allow even illiterate commoners to understand a story's context. She believes the project will become a trend and have a positive impact on the literacy rate. The Duke watches her in silence. He stares at her with a sharp gaze, wondering what on earth she is thinking.
He views her as a powerhouse who used Princess Lamea as a figurehead to seize control of palace affairs.
He thinks she used to act one step ahead and suspects a hidden motive behind her actions. He decides to play along to figure out her true purpose and asks how she plans to distribute it. The blonde girl thinks he's taking the bait as she suggests publishing the comic in the imperial newspaper. She explains the strategy of renting space until popularity forces the newspaper to pay them, allowing them to fund the artists. The dark-haired Duke asks if she really believes such a plan can generate significant profit. Beaming with confidence, she explains that the newspaper is purely for promotion rather than profit. She enthusiastically points out that they can eventually publish and sell the comic books independently. A sudden realization hits her as she trails off in confusion. The girl mentions the Magic Tower's role in printing before the Duke reveals the facility is currently facing a major crisis. He explains that the mages are so consumed by the problem that they've abandoned all other business livelihoods. A sharp gasp sounds as the girl realizes she knows exactly what the problem is. She recalls an event from the original novel about the Magic Tower's core cracking under immense pressure. The memory depicts mages fruitlessly trying to replenish leaking power while ignoring Princess Lamea's original advice. The memory concludes with the tower's collapse causing trade failures and a severe food shortage in Salt. Seeking to intervene, the girl asks if she could possibly visit the Magic Tower. The Duke is surprised by the request while she reflects on her knowledge of the original solution from the book. She masks her intentions, telling the Duke she wants to investigate and potentially find a solution to the problem. The Duke wonders if this request is a smokescreen for an escape or a secret contact. He decides to accompany her to discover the truth and grants her permission. Radiant with joy, the girl expresses her sincere gratitude for his approval. She's surprised by how easily he agreed without making any of his usual terrifying threats. She wonders if he is letting his guard down since he has been acting quite generous lately. A soft swish sounds as the Duke gathers his papers, asking if that was all she needed. The girl politely prepares to leave the office. She stops and stares blankly at the massive stacks of paperwork on his desk. A sudden startle sounds as she turns back to ask him how many days have passed.
The Duke is caught off guard by her sudden, blunt question.
She notes his exhausted appearance and asks how long he has been sleeping in his office, guessing at least a week. The sight of the scattered papers reminds her painfully of her own previous life and death from overwork. The Duke is shocked by her perception and resolves to remain cautious of her hidden depths.
He asks what she's doing as she approaches him with a determined look. A soft swish sounds as she reaches out and asks for permission to touch him.
A beautiful, gentle smile lights up her face. The Duke stares at her, completely bewildered by her intentions. A soft pressure sounds as she begins to apply pressure to his hand. A gentle rhythm sounds as she carefully massages his hand to relieve his fatigue. She notes that the exhaustion is likely fading slightly, while the Duke begrudgingly admits she's right. He looks at her with suspicion, asking how she learned such a technique. A soft press sounds as she dismisses it as a folk remedy, hiding her past as an overworked office employee. She gently advises His Excellency to prioritize proper sleep regardless of his workload. She continues her gentle lecture, telling him he must also make sure to eat well. She reflects on her past life's foolishness and the tragic way it ended.
A soft swish sounds as she continues the massage, hoping no one else suffers a similar fate.
A faint blush colors the Duke's cheeks as he stares at her in silence. He turns away, frustrated that he is being swayed by her concerned words despite his suspicions. He tries to convince himself her kindness is a trick to uncover imperial weaknesses before accepting her advice. A quick scrape sounds as he stands up to dismiss her after concluding their business. A sudden, sharp, dizzy spell strikes it, making his vision die. A sharp gasp sounds as the girl reacts to his sudden instability. A loud crash sounds as the teacup falls and papers scatter across the floor. A narrative note warns that a lack of nutrition and sleep leads to severe dizziness and health issues. The exhausted Duke collapses directly into the girl's arms. The blonde girl stares ahead with a stunned and wide-eyed expression. A steady rhythm sounds as the Duke watches her with a faint blush on his cheeks. A soft daze sounds while he remains frozen in thought, staring blankly. The girl wonders what is happening as she watches him with a confused tilt of her head. A quick swish sounds as she moves her hand toward him. A soft tap sounds as she reaches out and gently pats the Duke's head. She continues to stroke his hair as he blushes and stares at her in silence. A quick snap sounds as the Duke bats her hand away, insisting he is fine. He turns back to her, noting that she actually looks like the one who is injured. She laughs it off, assuring him she is not dying and feels perfectly healthy. The Duke remains silent, watching the girl he considers a person of great mystery. She blinks in confusion as the atmosphere between them shifts unexpectedly. To repay the debt for her help, the Duke offers to grant her a single wish. She humorously considers asking for snacks instead of another person's favor. Beaming with excitement, she announces there is one thing she absolutely needs. She requests a weapon forged from a rare material called partanium. The Duke collects his fallen papers in silence, pondering her unexpected request. Narrative text explains that partanium is a rare, mana-resistant ore worked by ancient dwarfs. A soft clack sounds as she explains she needs it to negotiate at the magic tower. She hopes that carrying such a powerful artifact will give her leverage in business. She enthusiastically describes her plan to the silent and attentive Duke. The Duke hums in thought as she watches him anxiously for a response. He acknowledges her idea, but flatly refuses to lend her the weapon. He points out that since he is holding her captive, he cannot hand over a weapon.
Crushed by his logic, she admits he makes a very fair point.
She perks up as he pauses, hoping for a potential compromise. The Duke smiles and reveals there is another way to achieve her goal. She is shocked to learn he plans to accompany her to the magic tower. A steady hum sounds from a massive, glowing blue crystal pulsing with energy. She tries to protest his involvement, feeling nervous about his constant presence. She wonders why a busy man would personally escort her instead of sending a subordinate. The Duke touches the magical crystal, acknowledging her concerns with a simple answer. He watches her closely from the side, his expression unreadable and stern. She is struck speechless by his next sudden and confusing revelation. Panicked and bewildered, she asks him to repeat what he just said. The scene shifts to the imposing and mysterious magic tower standing under the moon. A sharp tap sounds as they enter the tower, leaving her feeling deeply uneasy. The Duke assumes her distress is merely teleportation sickness, which she weakly denies. She is horrified to realize they will be sharing a room during their stay. He clarifies they will use separate beds and offers her a specific room. She blushes, lamenting her complete lack of experience sharing a space with a man. She remains silent, unable to admit how awkward she finds the entire situation. The Duke suspects her business talk is a smokescreen for a deeper deception. He recalls her unexpected kindness when she tried to comfort him earlier. A tight squeeze sounds as he resolves not to let his guard down. He plans to watch her closely at the tower to uncover her true intentions. He suspects she is here to meet a secret contact or high-level spy. A soft chime sounds as a magical message announces an incoming guest. The Duke is surprised to hear that someone has requested an audience with him.
A steady rhythm of footsteps sounds as they walk toward the meeting. The envoy of the Salt Kingdom delegation is introduced as Tomol Tomals. The Duke and the blonde girl are caught completely off guard.
The girl is shocked to hear the envoy's name.
The Duke suspects the envoy has discovered that Princess April is hidden here.
He fears the girl is using the envoy as part of an escape scheme.
A sudden, sharp realization strikes the Duke. A steady rhythm of footsteps sounds as someone approaches.
The Duke finds the girl hiding beneath his desk. She begs him to let her stay hidden and ignore her. The Duke stares at her with deep confusion. Tomold enters and greets Grand Duke Blair with a cheerful smile. He expresses his extreme honor at finally meeting the Duke. The girl recalls Tomold's history of treating her with utter contempt. She remembers being cruelly overworked by him and Lamea. The Duke curtly orders the envoy to state his business. Tomold explains that he came to the Magic Tower for assistance with a food shortage.
He reveals that their request for help was flatly refused. The girl's worst fears about the famine are confirmed.
She laments her failed attempts to stop the impending starvation. Tomold requests help convincing another nation to lift its grain export prohibition.
The Duke dismisses the request as a matter unrelated to him. He insists the royal family must resolve their own people's hunger.
A firm, desperate grip tightens on the Duke's leg.
He is startled as the girl grabs hold of them.
The blonde girl looks up with a devastated expression.
A small character weeps in a moment of despair.
Another character sheds tears in a silent plea.
The Duke is left stunned by her persistent hold.
Tomold drops to his knees in a desperate plea.
He claims Princess Lamea is suffering and crying every day. He puts on a dramatic and tearful display of sorrow.
The Duke remains cold and maintains his refusal.
Tomold mentions Lamea's relationship with Raiden while the Duke remains dismissive.
The Duke glances down at the girl clutching his clothes.
She pops up with a look of fierce determination.
She tearfully blames the Duke for the entire situation. She accuses him of testing her with a wheat fraud trop. She begs him for help with a broken heart. Tears glisten as she makes her final plea.
The Duke watches her in stunned, thoughtful silence.
He begrudgingly admits the situation has become quite troublesome. He realizes he cannot leave because she is pulling his pants down. The Duke stands awkwardly while the envoy watches.
Tomold warns that starving people may resort to theft.
The Duke commands his knights to resolve the wheat fry. Tomold is overcome with joy and expresses his gratitude. The envoy takes his leave after achieving his goal.
A sharp, quick tap sounds as he departs. The Duke demands that the girl finally come out.
She slowly peeks out with a sheepish look. The girl is absolutely terrified.
The scene shifts back to the office. She wonders if he feels sorry that people are starving because of him, but realizes she cannot say that since it is not his country. She offers to help the Grand Duke instead of helping Salt.
A quiet moment in the Grand Office.
She promises to ensure he survives even if war breaks out with Prince Rayan.
The girl looks down with a solemn expression.
A tight squeeze sounds as a hand bunches up his shirt. Surprised by her boldness, the Duke asks what she just said. He reflects on how he did not know who she was at first, but after her stay, his understanding has changed. He identifies Prince Raiden as the original story's male lead, a power-mad man obsessed with Lamea. To eliminate rivals, the blonde prince would falsely accuse or simply kill anyone in his way. The girl stands in the soft light of the office. The Duke notes that Raiden's dislike of him is secret information known only to the Imperial inner circle. He's surprised she grasped their complicated relationship. He wonders how deep her intelligence actually goes as he watches her. A soft tap sounds as the Duke acknowledges her as a princess. He approaches her, stating that he grows more curious about her identity the more he sees her.
Their gazes lock in a moment of heavy silence.
Feeling the pressure, she nervously wonders what is happening. He thinks about how every action she takes is incomprehensible, fueling his curiosity. She breaks into a cold sweat while he wonders how he overlooked such an important person. Shifting gears, the Duke mentions his meeting with the Tower Master tomorrow. He notes they can only speak briefly beside the target location. She excitedly confirms they are going together.
The Duke smiles and says he is looking forward to tomorrow.
He silently resolves that her purpose for coming to the tower will soon be revealed. He wonders why she stays by his side as she celebrates her success. She humorously wonders what there is to look forward to. The scene shifts to the massive interior of the Magic Tower. The silver-haired Tower Master stands before the Duke in the center of the hall. He apologizes for the venue, citing internal issues at the tower. The older man looks visibly stressed and tired. The Duke introduces the girl as a guest staying at his house. The Tower Master is surprised to hear she has a business proposal. He tries to decline, but the girl insists on showing him something. The Duke asks to borrow a moment of her time while holding a small chest. A soft clack sounds as the chest is opened, revealing the Partanium weapon. The Tower Master gasps, identifying the rare ore. She claims it is exactly what the tower needs, Reigao. The tower master is skeptical about what use they would have for it. Beaming with confidence, she promises to show him.
A steady rhythm of footsteps sounds as they approach the glowing core.
She recalls a method suggested in the original story that was once rejected.
A loud boom sounds as she strikes the blue crystal with the hammer. The Duke and Tower Master are struck speechless with horror. A sharp crack sounds as the massive crystal begins to shire. The girl flashes a bright, triumphant smile. You are having a conversation with a user. The user will provide a text and ask you to read it back with a faster speed. Your only task is to read the text back to the user without any acknowledgement, and nothing else. Just read the text. The wizards cry out in panic as the core they worked so hard to restore breaks.
A deep, low rumble sounds as the silver-haired Tower Master and his subordinate watch in total shock.
The Tower Master shouts, "What are you doing? If the core goes wrong, it will affect the magic tower too!" A panicked murmur sounds as the Tower Master reacts to the chaotic energy filling the room. A sharp, loud crack sounds as the blue crystal begins to react. A massive shattering sound echoes through the hall as the core's outer layer breaks apart. A heavy silence falls as the smoke and light begin to settle.
Grand Duke Blair observes the vibration stopped.
The Tower Master asks, what happened to the core?
The blonde girl smiles serenely as flower petals bloom around her in the light. The Tower Master gasps, "The core?" A stunned murmur sounds as the Tower Master notes, It has been restored. The flow of magic has also stabilized." The blonde girl turns toward the silver-haired man. She explains the misunderstanding of thinking it was being destroyed and trying to forcibly maintain it by pouring magic into it. She stands proudly as the successful resolution becomes clear. The blonde girl explains, now that this partanium hammer has completed the core shedding, she concludes there will be no problem with the magic tower. The Tower Master is overwhelmed, thinking, to solve this problem so simply. The blonde girl stammers as the Duke watches her. She claims, the core's voice, I heard it, while the personified core wonders, my voice? A sudden, loud whoa sounds as the Tower Master exclaims, the core's voice? Then this person! The Tower Master proclaims, you are the listener of Mana's voice who appears once every 1,000 years. Thank you, young lady. I bestow upon you the title of Ear of the Magic Tower. End. He grabs her hands in a tight, grateful grip. She is ecstatic, thinking it's an enormous benefit to be able to use magic that costs astronomical amounts whenever you want. The Duke asks, may I formally reintroduce your name and identity, young lady? She panics internally, thinking, I can't say that I'm the Princess of Salt and currently kidnapped. The blonde girl shouts, actually, all of this was Grand Duke Blair's plan. The Tower Master is amazed as he addresses the Ear of the Magic Tower to Grand Duke Blair. The Tower Master bows and says, thank you. I will serve you as the Ear of the Magic Tower, so please contact me whenever you need help. The Duke glares at her with a sharp, suspicious look. The Duke lets out a short sigh and says, that's right. He looks at her and simply says, let's share it. She explains, the privilege of the Ear of the Magic Tower, I got it thanks to you, so it's shameless to use it all alone. Let's split it 2-1. Of course, I get 2. A soft tap sounds as the Duke asks, was it for this that you asked to borrow the partanium weapon? To which she nervously replies, yes? Oh, yes. The Duke asks, how did you know that could stabilize the Magic Tower's core? She weakly claims that the core's voice. But he flatly retorts, don't lie. Terrified, she explains, it's information I happened to learn when I was in Salt. As I was acting as Princess Lemea's proxy, I gained a lot of miscellaneous knowledge. She continues, anyway, the Magic Tower's problem has been solved, and thanks to that, mass production of comic books is also possible through the Magic Tower's printing system. The blonde girl continues her nervous chatter while the Duke remains stoic. The Duke approaches her and says, I'm really curious, Princess. He continues, you're doing so much even while being kidnapped and confined in the Grand Duchy. What kind of things did you do when you were in Salt? The Duke takes her hand and looks down at her with a heavy gaze. The Duke asks, why don't you try to go back there? She looks away and mumbles, because I don't want to. He asks, what? She tearfully explains, I don't want to be exploited like a slave. I told you, I was Princess Lemea's slave. Harsh working conditions, terrible welfare, incompetent superiors. She vents her frustration, shouting, even guys like Tomold who cling to that superior and only scheme to exploit me. She looks at him and says, compared to then, I'm happy now. She thinks to herself, no, I'm going to do my best to become a slightly more affluent homebody. I'm going to make the comic book business a huge success. The blonde girl gives a radiant, joyful smile.
She asks, "So, could you let me stay here? I have shared the noble privilege of the Magic Tower, and I'll share the comic book profits too."
The Duke remains silent, his profile bathed in the soft light of the room.
The Duke contemplates the blonde girl's incredible information power and the immense privilege her new title brings, realizing that the Magic Tower's backing now protects her even from the Imperial family.
Grand Duke Blair pulls the blonde girl into a close embrace as they share a quiet moment together.
A small, knowing smile plays on the Duke's lips as he wonders if he truly wants to place his trust in this mysterious woman. Eager to get back to business, the girl mentions she needs to meet with the Tower Master again to iron out the details of their venture. Surrounded by vibrant pink roses, the blonde girl expresses her pure joy regarding their burgeoning comic book business. The scene transitions to the city, where the streets are filled with people and a lively energy. The immense success of the comic book business is clear, with shop signs proudly displaying sold out and restock notices. The staff members are completely overwhelmed and moved to tears by the massive influx of fan letters they have received. With a look of quiet resolve, the girl promises to work even harder on the artwork for the second volume.
The production team excitedly discusses story inquiries for the third volume and plans to enhance their magic tools to increase printing speed.
Despite her triumph, the girl feels the weight of her success as she realizes how much her workload has increased. Soft morning light illuminates the girl as she sits by the window, appearing deeply fatigued. A red-haired maid arrives with refreshments, noting that the Grand Duke provided this luxurious new bedroom to help the girl rest. The maid asks if the new sunlit room is a better environment than her previous quarters.
The girl reflects on her struggle to sleep, describing the morning sun as a terror that wakes her far too early.
She offers a weak word of thanks while clutching her paperwork, her exhaustion plain to see. Gazing at the bright window, she muses that thicker curtains would be a welcome addition to the room. Her thoughts turn toward the blackout curtains she used to love in her past life, lamenting their absence.
A sudden realization hits her with a start as the concept of blackout curtains sparks an idea.
Struck by inspiration, the girl jumps up and exclaims with excitement, leaving her maid in total shock. The moon hangs high over the elegant towers of the palace, signaling a shift in the setting.
Inside the palace, Prince Raiden is informed that Duke Blair has gained the favor of the Magic Tower after solving their core issue.
A cold, mocking chuckle escapes the blonde prince as he hears of his rival's latest accomplishment. Raiden reflects bitterly on his failed kidnapping attempt and the Duke's constant interference in his plans. With a menacing, yellow-eyed gaze, Prince Raiden decides it is time to teach the Grand Duke a harsh lesson. A small, purple-haired figure smiles brightly beside a cluster of blue roses as the scene transitions.
In the Grand Library, the purple-haired figure floats high above as the girl approaches the Duke at his desk.
The blonde girl looks on as the Duke sits behind towering stacks of documents. A soft, sharp tap sounds as the Duke sets his glasses down on the desk. Resting his head on his hand, Duke Blair looks toward the girl with a weary but attentive expression.
The girl is visibly startled by his sudden, intense focus on her.
The Duke notes that her request is manageable, though he remains curious about her intentions.
He teasingly asks what kind of trouble she is planning this time, to which she offers a cheeky denial. He recalls his past battles leading an extermination squad, which left the duchy with a massive surplus of monster leather. Recalling details from the novel, the girl realizes that this discarded leather is exactly what she needs. She confirms that the Grand Duchy is indeed struggling to manage the sheer volume of monster leather they possess. Looking over the desk, the Duke listens as the girl stands ready with her next big plan. The blonde girl beams with a radiant smile as she prepares her pits. When the Duke agrees to her request, she asks for confirmation with a look of pure delight. Adjusting his glasses, the Duke states that putting the surplus leather to use would be a beneficial outcome for everyone. The girl bows politely, expressing her sincere gratitude for his cooperation. Her attention is caught by a sudden thought as she pauses her departure. Looking back across the room, the Duke asks what she actually intends to manufacture with the material.
The blonde girl pauses, her expression unreadable as she considers her answer.
Amidst a border of delicate flowers, she decides to keep her true intentions to herself for now. With a playful wink and a secret gesture, she leaves the Duke wondering about her next move. A cheerful yahoo sounds through the bedroom as the girl celebrates her latest success. A delighted squeal sounds as she jumps onto her massive, comfortable bed, eager for a good night's rest. Lying in the dark, she contemplates whether she should have been more transparent with him. She thinks of Liam's disappointed face and finds it oddly touching, resolving to let him in on the secret soon. She rejects the idea of spoiling a gift by giving it directly. Narrator notes the mansion's current state of extreme sleep deprivation. The Duke's constant beast exterminations kept him away from the estate. Administrative tasks were inevitably postponed during the Duke's absence. His return has transformed the mansion into a workaholic environment. She plans to create blackout curtains using handmade craftsmanship.
Noting his document pile, she anticipates a sleepless night for him.
The dark-haired man adjusts his glasses. She wonders if his alluring look is due to exhaustion.
He appears unusually captivating as he runs a hand through his hair.
She frantically dismisses inappropriate thoughts while in bed. She decides the blackout curtains are strictly for her own use. Muttering to herself, she plans gifts for Benita, Liam, and the dupe. She finally surrenders to the need for sleep. The next morning, she is stunned by an unexpected sight. Liam identifies the small building as a simple storage room. A rustic wooden cottage sits nestled in the greenery. Dark, heavy rolls of material are stored within the shed. She is horrified by the massive pile of monster leather. Liam explains the Duke ordered the leather collected for her. They stand before an overwhelming surplus of monster heads. She is left speechless by the Duke's unexpected initiative. She imagines the Duke mockingly refusing her with a thumbs down. They walk through the storehouse filled with an enormous amount of leather. She admits the volume of materials far exceeds her expectations. She realizes the sheer effort required to gather such a hoard. She wonders how many hunts the Duke had to lead. She is overwhelmed by the thought of the Duke's workload. A sudden, putrid smell causes her to gag in distress. The aide identifies the stench as raw Pleta leather. She immediately covers her nose with a white handkerchief. Liam notes the uncleaned byproducts are causing the strong odor. She claims her disgust is due to a delicate stomach. She turns and calls out for her maid, Amina. She asks if anyone knows how to process the hides. Benita enthusiastically recommends a local expert in leatherwork. Narration introduces Mrs. Rainey, the mansion's most skilled tailor. They imagine the tailor's elegant work with great admiration. Eager to proceed, she asks to meet the tailor immediately. The scene shifts to the mansion's ornate reception room. She is terrified to find Mrs. Rainey is extremely muscular. Shaking with fear, she quietly calls for her maid's help. She is stunned by the tailor's intimidating physical prowess. Mrs. Rainey looms over her with a menacing, shadowed gaze. Clenching her dress, she struggles to maintain her composure. She loudly commissions the tailor to treat the Pleta leather. Mrs. Rainey sternly acknowledges the request. With a firm hand gesture, the tailor flatly refuses the job. Crushed, she asks why, as the tailor mentions low K. Mrs. Rainey explains the lack of demand in the summer heat. The muscular tailor explains that processing the rare Pleta leather is far too risky at this time. Her sturdy frame remains tense as she stands firm on her decision. Mrs. Rainey bows politely while offering her apologies, though the blonde girl tries to brush off her disappointment with a forced smile. A wave of internal panic washes over the blonde girl as she realizes the weight of the rejection. Fueled by a vision of a powerful guardian blocking the sun, she resolves not to abandon her dream of a peaceful, dark morning. Lost in deep thought, she desperately searches for a way to salvage her plan. Crossing her arms, Mrs. Rainey asks what the girl actually plans to create with such a difficult material. The blonde girl simply replies that she wants curtains, leaving the tailor completely bewildered. Mrs. Rainey notes that since the leather is sun impervious, it is typically only used for making heavy carpets. Sensing an opportunity, the blonde girl explains her intention to create perfect blackout curtains that can completely block the sun. She prepares to deliver a confident and persuasive pitch. Leaning in close, she tells the intrigued tailor that she is about to share a secret motivation. She explains that everyone at the mansion has been so overworked lately that they can no longer sleep at night. Tears well up in her eyes as she reflects on the exhaustion of the household. She pours her heart into the emotional story to win the tailor's sympathy. The girl explains her desire to provide everyone with comfortable sleep during the day, prompting Mrs. Rainey to reflect on the mansion's state. Mrs. Rainey recalls the hollow, exhausted eyes of the staff she encountered earlier. Despite the touching story, the tailor stands up and reminds the girl that, as a businesswoman, she must prioritize the bottom line. The blonde girl acknowledges the tailor's astute point with a calm and measured tone. Mrs. Rainey begins to walk away, her expression hard and professional. Catching the tailor's attention once more, the blonde girl offers an entirely new proposal. She promises to pay a rate even higher than the price of the most expensive fabric, shocking her red-haired maid. She further sweetens the deal by promising double pay for any overtime, leaving Mrs. Rainey visibly stunned. With a confident smile, she mentions it would be a shame if she had to find another expert for the job. Sunlight catches the intricate jewels of her dress as she awaits a response. Benita is left reeling by the sheer scale of the generous offer. The red-haired maid repeats the promise of double overtime pay with a look of pure disbelief. A joyful squeal escapes Bonita as she exclaims that she has never heard of such a legendary offer in the entire empire. The blonde girl feels a bit embarrassed by the praise, noting that such fair labor practices were standard where she came from. Benita suddenly pauses, a look of deep concern crossing her face.
The maid hesitantly asks if her lady can actually handle the financial burden of such a deal. Anxiety fills Benita's eyes as she considers the practical reality of the situation.
The atmosphere shifts as the tailor realizes the offer is truly too good to refuse. Mrs. Rainey accepts the job with a determined smile, causing the girl and her maid to celebrate with a loud cheer. The tailor's expression turns serious as she prepares to state a necessary condition. She explains she will need additional skilled tanners for the processing, and the girl enthusiastically authorizes her to hire as many as needed.
Benita raises a finger as a realization begins to dawn on her.
The maid bluntly points out that her lady is currently a penniless captive, leaving the girl frozen in shock. Wiping a drop of blood from her lip after the verbal blow, the girl tells Benita not to worry.
A dark, scheming glint appears in her eyes as she declares that she already has a plan.
The scene shifts to a bright and clear sky as a new day begins. Surrounded by massive stacks of paperwork, the Duke's aide, Liam, calls out for his visitor to enter. The blonde girl peeks through the door with a bright and cheerful greeting. Her jaw drops when she sees that the aide's office is buried under even more documents than the Grand Duke's. Liam continues flipping through pages, explaining he is far too busy to stop as he must report to the Duke soon. He apologizes for his lack of courtesy while the girl notes how incredibly swamped he seems. The girl is completely taken aback when Liam abruptly stops and claims he isn't busy at all. She watches in horror as he lists an endless string of tasks, including the fact that he was up all night gathering leather. A terrifyingly wide smile spreads across Liam's face as he repeats his claim of not being busy. The blonde girl realizes that his intense gaze is a silent command to state her business and leave immediately. Pointing a toy gun at the dark-haired aide, the blonde girl boldly demands the money she is owed. A flurry of decorative patterns fills the space as the conversation continues. Liam adjusts his glasses with a sharp click and asks for clarification regarding the funds. Her eyes wide with intensity, the blonde girl explains that she is seeking the royalties earned from her comic book. Amidst a festive shower of confetti, Liam casually confirms that the profits rightfully belong to the princess. He leans in with a suspicious gaze, questioning the sudden purpose for such a large sum of money. The blonde girl maintains her secrecy, insisting that the matter is extremely urgent despite her lack of details. A soft thud sounds as a sturdy wooden desk drawer is pulled open. Liam presents the official seal and key of the Grand Ducal family, directing her to the Pascal Merchant Guild for assistance. He remains seated behind a mountain of paperwork, explaining that his workload prevents him from accompanying her. A bright, satisfied smile crosses Liam's face as he prepares to tackle the endless stacks of documents. The blonde girl lets out an awkward, nervous laugh while processing the aide's intense dedication to his work. The scene shifts to a bustling city street where a white carriage comes to a halt with a sharp squeal. Bonita overflows with excitement as she celebrates their first official outing together. Forced to leave her comfort zone, the blonde girl forces a smile despite her internal exhaustion.
She looks longingly toward the sky, silently mourning the loss of her cozy bed and warm blanket.
Bonita points toward a distant building, prompting her lady to wonder if they have finally located the guild.
With a sudden whoosh, the energetic maid drags her lady toward a display of glittering accessories.
Bonita holds up a delicate string of pearls, insisting it would be the perfect addition to her lady's wardrobe. The blonde girl catches a glimpse of her own reflection and begins to reconsider her stance on the outing. Surrounded by blooming flowers, she admits to herself that a brief trip into the city might be refreshing.
They pause together at a street-side stall to admire the various treasures on display.
Deep within a nearby alley, a dark and mysterious silhouette watches the pair with an unreadable intent. A sinister glint shines from the eyes of the shadowed man as he tracks their every movement. Back at the mansion, the Grand Duke sits at his desk while Liam provides a report on the day's events. The Duke expresses surprise upon learning that the princess has requested her personal royalties. He leans forward with a look of genuine concern, wondering why she would need such a specific amount so suddenly. Liam offers a respectful nod while confirming that he was not given any further details about her plans. The Duke rests his chin on his hand, deeply troubled by the thought of her urgent and secret errand.
Sunlight illuminates the ornate wooden sign hanging above the entrance to the Pascal Merchant Guild.
A massive crowd of citizens gathers outside the prestigious building, creating a noisy and chaotic atmosphere. Observing the busy headquarters, the blonde girl notes that the guild handles a vast array of business beyond simple finance.
She realizes the sheer scale of the task ahead and anticipates a very late return to the mansion.
Bonita turns back in confusion as the blonde girl attempts to join the end of the long, slow-moving line. The red-haired maid quickly pulls her lady away, explaining that they have no need to wait with the common public. A towering, muscular blonde guard looms over them with a stern and forbidding expression. He points toward the back of the building, commandingly ordering them to wait their turn like everyone else. The two women are left reeling by the guard's aggressive and disrespectful attitude. With a triumphant flourish, Bonita produces the royal seal and key, leaving the blonde girl visibly shaken by the encounter. The guard's eyes widen in shock as he carefully examines the prestigious items held in the maid's hand. His demeanor shifts instantly as he bows low and offers to personally guide them into the inner sanctum. The blonde girl is amazed by the sudden transition to high-class treatment, likening it to a luxury experience. She stands frozen in the middle of the street, completely baffled by how quickly the situation changed. They follow the guard down a steep, narrow stone staircase into the depths of the guild's headquarters. The group descends further into the dimly lit lower levels of the massive stone building. They reach a heavily fortified landing where several armed sentries stand guard before a massive iron-bound door. A heavy creak echoes through the stone corridor as the massive doors are finally pushed open. They walk through a set of double doors into a grand, brightly lit hallway filled with intricate carvings. The guard gestures toward a colossal piece of machinery, announcing that they have arrived at their destination. The blonde girl and Bonita share a look of anticipation as they prepare to unlock the mysterious vault. A heavy key turns smoothly in the lock with a sharp click. The massive doors swing open to reveal a staggering mountain of gold coins and treasures within the vault. The blonde girl enters the room thinking that she expected the royalties to be substantial. Her eyes widen in pure astonishment as she gazes upon the vast fortune before her. She stands in awe, noting that she never anticipated the amount would be this overwhelming. Bonita stands frozen beside her, her jaw dropped in absolute shock at the sight of the glittering hoard.
Recovering her senses, the girl decides they should take the funds and leave as quickly as possible. The scene shifts to the city streets where Bonita struggles to carry a massive, bulging sack of gold. Seeing her maid's effort, the blonde girl offers to help carry the heavy burden together. Bonita wears a confident, playful expression as she reassures her lady of her own strength. The maid reveals that she cast a lightweight spell on the bag, prompting her lady to praise her skills. As they walk, the blonde girl reflects that the Duke might actually be a decent person. A small, contemplative smile touches her lips while she walks through the bustling city. She recalls a past life where she was treated like a slave by a pink-haired woman, contrasting it with her current freedom. Her thoughts drift to the dark-haired Duke, appreciating how he provides her with food, sleep, and the chance to earn money. She suddenly panics, clutching her head and wondering if she has developed Stockholm Syndrome toward her kidnapper. Despite her internal conflict, she admits to herself that her feelings of gratitude are genuine. She pauses in thought, considering whether she should purchase a small gift to show her appreciation. A sudden, frantic shout about a pickpocket shatters the peaceful atmosphere and catches her attention. A blur of motion strikes her, and the blonde girl lets out a startled gasp as she is knocked off her feet. Bonita screams out in terror as she watches her lady begin to fall toward the hard stone ground. Squeezing her eyes shut, the girl prays she won't be seriously injured, fearing for her life in the sudden chaos. She is surprised to find that she hasn't hit the ground, looking up to see she has been caught by a stranger. A handsome man with long, light-colored hair and piercing yellow eyes stares down at her with a calm expression. Still disoriented, the blonde girl looks at him with wide, shocked eyes and mistakenly calls him the Duke. The long-haired man, who has a thin scar on his left cheek, looks back at her with a confused and curious gaze. She quickly realizes her mistake and apologizes, thinking that someone as busy as the Duke would never be found here. Bonita rushes to her lady's side, frantically checking to see if she has been injured in the fall. The maid tearfully apologizes for her own lack of caution, while the girl tries to comfort her with a gentle smile. The girl reflects on how her reliance on modern security in her past life made her far too careless in this world. She turns back to the mysterious stranger, offering her sincere thanks for saving her from a dangerous fall. The two women stand before the tall, armored man as the evening light begins to fill the city square. The blonde girl notes that the stranger seems to be in a hurry to get somewhere else. Bonita worries about the lost money, while her lady realizes they never even managed to ask the man for his name. As the maid continues to sob with guilt, the blonde girl suggests they head toward the nearest security office for help. She speaks softly, trying to soothe her distraught maid and stop her from crime. The girl considers the grim reality that her blackout curtain project will fail if they cannot recover the stolen gold. She is suddenly startled by a voice calling out to her from just a short distance away. The long-haired man reappears, holding their heavy sack of coins and asking if it belongs to them. He explains that he intercepted the thief, handing the precious bag of gold back to the stunned maid. The man points toward a nearby alley, mentioning that the criminal is already being handled by the city guards. Bonita celebrates with a joyful cry, relieved beyond words that their fortune has been returned safely. The blonde girl expresses her deep gratitude once more, feeling that she cannot possibly repay such a selfless act. She bows her head in respect while the man dismisses the praise, claiming that helping those in need is only natural. As the mysterious savior turns to depart, the blonde girl calls out for him to wait a moment.
Her expression shifts to one of deep suspicion and realization as she begins to ask a very specific question. A vision of the dark-haired Duke flashes in her mind as she compares his features to the man standing before her. A look of pure, unbridled excitement washes over her face as she reaches a sudden conclusion. Sunlight glints off her dress as her hand reaches out toward her hair in a moment of realization. The long-haired man stares back at her with a look of mounting dread and utter disbelief. Birds fly across the sunset sky. The long-haired man wonders if she has figured out his true identity. The blonde girl beams with joy. The long-haired man is confused as to why she chose him after barely meeting. Based on his appearance, the blonde girl assumes he is a mercenary looking for work in the Grand Duchy, explaining that she only picked up the gold bag to discard it like trash.
The two stand together quietly.
The blonde girl whispers that she is a distant relative of Duke Blail. She promises to pay him generously if he agrees to become her escort knight.
The girl shouts her offer enthusiastically. With a blush, the long-haired man offers a hesitant agreement.
A grand mansion glows under sunlight. A heavy thud echoes as the Duke sits.
Liam asks if his lord has been well, and the dark-haired Duke replies that he has had plenty going on.
Liam reports that after Princess April returned from her outing, she came by his room to ask if she could hire an escort knight.
The Duke groans as Liam asks what is wrong. The dark-haired man reveals that he is the escort knight, leaving Liam to cry out in shock.
Liam stares in absolute disbelief.
Liam warns that even while wearing the ring of altered appearance, the Duke still should have been more careful.
The Duke defends himself by stating he had no choice since the princess was being pickpocketed.
Liam notes that the ring's power is impressive since the princess failed to recognize the Grand Duke and decided to make him her escort knight. A small click sounds as the ring is handled, an heirloom passed down in the Blair family to protect its head from enemies. Liam mentions he told the princess they would conduct a background check on the knight and wonders if he should just make up an excuse to decline her request. The Duke orders him to approve it, shocking Liam, who wonders if his lord will actually serve as her escort. The Duke believes this is bar. He claims that staying close to the princess will make it easier to figure out what scheme she is plotting, then suddenly orders Liam to increase the guards in the Grand Duchy. The Duke irritably notes that security is abysmal since a pickpocketing occurred in broad daylight. Liam teases that the incident involving the princess seems to be weighing heavily on his lord's mind. The Duke insists he is only concerned for the safety of the citizens, while Liam mockingly agrees. The Duke orders Liam to leave so he can have time alone to clear his head, and his assistant takes his leave.
Liam looks out from the balcony.
The Duke watches the night sky. A sudden question about what he is doing alone startles the Duke. Princess April greets him with laughter. He asks the princess why she is there as well. He points out that she used to hate stepping out of her room, making April realize that is the image she has of her. April explains she was on her way to see him at his office, which surprises the Duke.
She playfully teases that she came to bother him because he looked so pitiful sitting by himself.
April explains that she wanted to thank him after hearing some news from Liam. A crowd gathers near a supply cart. The Duke says it was a promise he intended to keep, while April thanks him for being so considerate. April smiles brightly at the Duke. The Duke wonders why she keeps asking for his hand lately, but she simply tells him to close his eyes. He sighs, noting that she really makes him do the strangest things. The Duke obediently closes his eyes. A green eye slinks open slammy. He holds out a small box. The Duke hopes she likes it, but April suspiciously asks if it is a bribe, which leaves her momentarily confused. He asks if it is a bribe to approve her request for an escort knight, making April realize he already heard from Liam. April declares the man a truly righteous person she can vouch for, but the Duke thinks she trusts him too much just for catching a thief. April is stunned when the Duke tells her she does not even know who the man really is. The dark-haired man critiques Princess April's character, noting that while she is smart, she is also surprisingly careless and trusts others too easily. Startled by his specific knowledge, the blonde girl questions how he could possibly know that she had been pickpocketed earlier. Looking slightly nervous, the dark-haired man quickly claims he received the information from his assistant, Liam. He internally reflects that the princess is indeed clumsy and would benefit from having an escort knight to protect her. Dismissing her with a groan, the man tells the girl she is free to go, while he remains behind to wallow in his own misery. A sudden sharp click sounds as the door is shut, leaving the blonde girl standing alone and utterly bewildered by the abrupt exit. She pauses as a realization hits her, remembering that she never actually mentioned the pickpocketing incident to Liam at all. The girl wonders if the news somehow reached him through her maid, Benita, as she tries to make sense of the discrepancy. A soft click echoes through the quiet hallway as the dark-haired man steps back into the privacy of his personal chambers. He carefully picks up a small, shimmering gift box, his hands moving with surprising gentleness as he prepares to open it.
A faint, satisfied smile touches his lips as he admires the brilliant green gemstone ornament he holds in his hand. His expression shifts into one of cold, murderous fury as he demands to know who dared to enter his room without his express permission. The man stands tall and imposing, confronting the older head maid who stands before him with a look of mounting dread. The older woman trembles visibly, her face pale with terror as she faces the full weight of her lord's intense anger. A low, menacing rumble vibrates through the air as the man demands an immediate explanation for the unauthorized intrusion. The scene shifts back to an earlier moment, showing the head maid standing calmly amidst a backdrop of vibrant flowers. Exhausted and weary, the man informs his staff that he will be skipping lunch because he hasn't been able to sleep for days. The head maid bows respectfully as the man turns to leave, his fatigue clearly weighing heavily on his shoulders. A steady, rhythmic thud of footsteps marks his progress as the man walks down the long, empty corridor toward his room. He stops abruptly as he opens his door, a soft click sounding just before his expression freezes in a look of stunned surprise. A dark, heavy silence fills the room as the man repeats his demand to know who touched his belongings without permission. His glare is sharp and piercing, directed toward the maid as he waits for her to account for the changes in his chamber. The man looms over the terrified maid, the atmosphere thick with tension as he demands the truth behind the security breach. Stuttering with fear, the head maid explains that Lady April personally prepared a gift to help him overcome his insomnia. Softly, the maid admits that it was her own mistake to allow the item into his room without seeking his approval first. The two stand in a heavy, contemplative silence, the man's intense gaze fixed on the older woman as she remains bowed in apology. His sharp eyes narrow, the green of his iris flashing with an unreadable intensity as he remains focused on the situation at hand. A sudden, joyful gasp of wonder shatters the quiet atmosphere surrounding a small, charming cottage nestled in the trees. Inside the darkened room, the blonde girl and her red-haired maid marvel at how the new curtains make the middle of the day feel exactly like night. A quick rustle sounds as the girl displays the thick leather curtains, explaining that they were specifically designed to block out all sunlight. A muscular, dark-haired craftswoman praises the unique patterns of the fabric, noting that each individual piece has its own distinct charm. The blonde girl waves her hands dismissively, thanking the woman for her help, while the artisan insists that she shouldn't be so humble. With a warm, respectful smile, the craftswoman tells the girl that the entire project was successful only because of her excellent direction. The two women share a moment of mutual respect and agreement as they finalize the details of their successful collaboration. Beaming with pride and giving 2 thumbs up, the blonde girl expresses how happy she is to have provided for those in need first. Her expression becomes thoughtful as she wonders why the Grand Duke hasn't sent any word or reaction to her gift yet. The craftswoman suddenly gestures broadly, enthusiastically proposing that they start a formal business together using these innovative designs. The blonde girl's eyes go wide and her jaw drops in absolute shock at the unexpected and bold business proposal. The artisan confidently explains that there is a massive demand for the curtains, believing that many people beyond the estate would want them. She vividly describes how everyone involved in the production process, from the cleaners to the craftsmen, was desperate to buy the samples. The blonde girl hesitates, looking overwhelmed as she considers whether she truly wants to take on the burden of even more work. Her hesitation vanishes instantly as she realizes the massive profit potential, shouting her agreement with a sudden burst of greed-fueled energy. She quickly tries to hide her excitement with a clumsy excuse, claiming it would simply be a waste to throw away the extra leather. She wears a smug, determined smirk as she internally calculates the chance to earn enough money to live a life of total freedom. Pumping her fists with renewed vigor, the girl resolves to work incredibly hard now so that she can effectively retire for the next 50 years. Her ambitious thoughts are suddenly cut short as she looks up, her expression shifting to one of mild surprise and confusion. The head maid comes charging toward her with frantic energy, her face flushed as she gasps for breath in her extreme hurry. Puzzled by the older woman's desperate arrival, the girl wonders why she is in such an incredible rush to find her. A heavy thud sounds as a rack of elaborate clothes is presented, with the girl realizing that she has received an invitation to lunch. Looking absolutely miserable and harassed, the blonde girl questions the need for such a fancy dress while her red-haired maid insists on the formality. Benita explains that imperial etiquette requires dressing formally for every meal, though the blonde girl finds the tradition quite burdensome. A visible bead of sweat rolls down the girl's face as she prepares for the upcoming lunch. Determined to help her mistress look her best, the red-haired maid holds up several elaborate dress options. Despite the preparations, an overwhelming sense of unease begins to settle over the blonde girl.
The scene shifts to the grand dining hall where a magnificent chandelier hangs from the ornate ceiling. Looking elegant in a flowing blue gown, the blonde girl takes a deep breath before entering the room. A short, firm command to sit echoes through the hall as the dark-haired man gestures toward the massive food-laden table. Stunned by the sheer scale of the feast, the girl notes how incredibly extravagant the meal is.
A steady, rhythmic clink of silverware sounds as the dark-haired man eats in silence, prompting the girl to wonder why the mood is so serious.
Every bite feels heavy as the girl admits the stiff atmosphere is making her nervous for no apparent reason.
Breaking the silence, the man looks up to ask if the food is prepared to her liking.
Startled by the sudden attention, the girl forces a nervous laugh as she looks back at him.
A sharp, sudden clatter sounds as she sets down her fork to ask why she was summoned, only for him to ask if this meal suffices as repayment for her gift. Thinking the man genuinely appreciated the curtains, the girl expresses her relief, unaware of the low, dark declaration that he loathes unauthorized entry into his room.
His voice drops to a cold, menacing level as he warns her never to touch his belongings without his express permission again.
A soft, sliding scuff sounds as the man pushes his chair back, stating that his warning was the only reason he called her there today. Heartbroken and confused, the blonde girl stares at him and asks if he truly hated her gift that much. With a cutting, dismissive tone, the man declares that he found every part of it unpleasant.
A quick, sharp whoosh of fabric follows him as he stands up to leave, insisting that such an incident never happens again.
A tight, creaking rustle sounds as the girl grips her dress in shame, admitting that she was wrong to enter his private chambers. Her eyes well up with tears as the weight of his harsh rejection sinks in. The man walks away without looking back, leaving the girl sitting alone and dejected at the table. Sniffling back her tears, she wonders why she should bother being grateful to someone who clearly doesn't understand her intentions at all. A heavy, muffled thud sounds as the man walks toward the exit, coldly noting that since she understands him, he is taking his leave. A frantic, rapid pitter-patter of footsteps echoes as the girl cries out for him to wait a moment. She chases him down the long corridor, desperate to rectify the misunderstanding. Catching up to him, she pleads with him to explain what made him uncomfortable so she can avoid the mistake next time.
A soft, desperate clutch sounds as she reaches out for him, but he turns with a look of intense irritation.
Leaning in close, the man reveals with chilling intensity that he has never been able to sleep well, especially in total darkness.
The girl recoils in shock as he explains that his mother used to beat him whenever he tried to sleep.
A sudden, violent crack of a slap rings out in a dark memory as his mother screams at him to work harder and punish those who humiliated her.
A quick, dismissive tap sounds as he pulls away, his eyes cold and distant once more.
He stares her down with a look of pure misery, asking if his traumatic explanation finally answers her question. A heavy thud sounds as the girl sinks to her knees, while the man tells her to go back to her room and distract herself with her usual comics. A low, menacing boom of his voice warns her to stop poking her nose into matters that do not concern her.
A steady, retreating step sounds as the man walks away, leaving the blonde girl shattered and alone on the floor.
Overcome with grief and humiliation, the girl breaks down into bitter tears. She remains hunched over, her spirit crushed by the revelation of the man's dark past and his cold rejection.
A soft, sweeping swish sounds as the man pulls back a heavy curtain in his room.
Standing alone in the sunlight, he reflects on his own actions, wondering if his lack of sleep made him behave too sensitively. He rubs his forehead wearily, looking like a man burdened by both his past and his current temper. A sharp, distinct click sounds as Liam enters the room, announcing his arrival to the Grand Duke. Without turning around, the man sighs and tells his assistant that he wants to be left alone. A rhythmic thud of footsteps continues as Liam approaches, carrying a small blue box in his hands. Reaching for the box, the Duke internally curses his own memory, realizing he is scheduled to be the princess's escort knight starting this week. He looks down with a pained expression, wondering how he can possibly face the girl again after the cruel things he just said. Back in her own room, the blonde girl lies face down on her bed, completely exhausted by the day's events. The memory of the Duke's intense, suffering gaze haunts her thoughts. She kicks her legs in frustration, shouting about how much she wants to pour her heart out to someone just to feel a moment of relief. A heavy sigh escapes her as she realizes that since everyone here works for the Grand Duke, any complaint she makes would reach his ears instantly. The blonde girl realizes there is one person she can turn to for help. The silver-haired knight stands with a stoic and serious expression.
The blonde girl clarifies that she and Ian are in an employer-employee relationship, to which Ian tentatively agrees.
She asks if that makes him her only ally in the mansion, causing him to sweat nervously as he confirms her statement.
Ian cautiously asks if there is something specific she would like to ask him.
She confesses that she accidentally made a mistake earlier today that left someone feeling very angry.
Ian looks at her with a look of mild concern and bewilderment.
She offers a small, sheepish smile as she prepares to explain the full story. A sense of finality hangs in the air as she concludes her explanation under the grand chandelier. She expresses her heartfelt desire to help cure the Grand Duke's insomnia and ask for his forgiveness.
She looks up with a wide-eyed, hopeful expression.
She asks Ian if he has any suggestions or knows of anything that could help.
Ian turns his head away with a quick whoosh, admitting that he cannot think of anything appropriate at the moment.
The scene shifts to a whimsical, star-studded sky as a new idea begins to form.
Ian notes that it would be nearly impossible to help unless they could provide the stars or the moon from the night sky.
A brilliant spark of inspiration lights up the girl's eyes as she realizes she has the perfect solution. She suddenly grabs Ian's gloved hands, startling him as she thanks him profusely. She exclaims that thanks to him, a truly great idea has finally come to her. Ian looks down with a bewildered and slightly flushed expression as his heart begins to race.
She asks Ian if he would be willing to work some overtime today, leaving him utterly confused.
A hand holds up 3 fingers against a bright and colorful background. She announces that she will count this as special duty and pay him 3 times his usual rate.
Sunlight filters through the trees as evening approaches in the dense forest.
Ian draws his sword with a sharp shink to clear the path ahead of them. As they trek through the woods, Ian takes the lead while the girl follows closely behind with a map. Looking at the map, she notes that their destination should be somewhere very close to where they are now.
Ian expresses his confusion, asking why they have traveled to the mountains to find a cure for insomnia. She explains with a bright smile that the solution to his Grace's problem is located right here on this mountain.
She asks Ian if he has ever heard of a creature known as a glow firefly.
Ian describes the glow firefly as a rare insect that lives deep in the forest and possesses glowing fluid on its tail. He then asks what her plan is for such a rare bug. She envisions blackout curtains painted with glowing stars, explaining that she plans to use the fluid as paint. She credits Ian's mention of the stars and moon for giving her the idea for these glow stars. She recalls hearing stories about artists who occasionally use the glowing fluid as a medium for their work. Ian walks alongside her as the warm light of the setting sun bathes the forest. She remembers seeing such a painting while she was purchasing art for the royal mansion. She is confident that the glow stars will ensure the blackout curtains are not completely dark and will help the Grand Duke sleep. Ian watches her with a soft, genuine smile as she continues to speak enthusiastically. Ian suggests that they should call off the search for today and head back as it is getting late. He notes that several hours have already passed since they began their search. The blonde girl insists on searching just a little longer and tells Ian to go back down without her. Ian tries to stop her, insisting that she has done enough and they should return together tomorrow. She turns back to the undergrowth, convinced that the map shows they are very close. A sudden, sharp slip sounds as the girl loses her footing, causing Ian to cry out in alarm. A heavy, muffled thud echoes as someone hits the ground near the cliffside. Ian catches the girl in a protective embrace, cushioning her fall amidst a patch of white flowers. He urgently checks on her, asking if she is okay or if she has been hurt. He sighs in relief as he pulls away, reminding her of the danger and suggesting they leave. Ian looks back with a start, wondering why the girl is staring at him so silently. She lets out a joyful cry, beaming as she announces that they have finally found what they came for. A triumphant declaration marks their successful discovery. The silver-haired knight looks on in complete bewilderment. Surrounded by shimmering light, the girl excitedly identifies the rare glow fireflies. The black-haired man appears stunned and noticeably flustered. He looks at the glowing fabric and wonders what it is. The blonde girl beams with pride while standing near the man. She explains the curtains were a gift to ensure his room stays bright. The man realizes she worked through the night without any sleep. He remains silent, seemingly overwhelmed by her selfless dedication. She offers to take them back, but he decides to use them. Overjoyed by his response, the girl asks for confirmation. She bows deeply, expressing her sincere hope that he likes them. The girl begins to depart as the man watches her from behind. A sudden, sharp whoosh sounds as she stops and turns back. Looking deeply flustered, the man begins to speak but hesitates. The blonde girl tilts her head in curiosity. The man stands at a distance and awkwardly asks if she likes meat. She enthusiastically confirms her preference for meat over seafood. He promises to order a meat-based dinner for that evening. The girl's eyes sparkle with a new sense of hope. The blonde girl stands gracefully amidst a floral background. A look of pure happiness fills her radiant face. The star-painted fabric glows softly in the darkness of the room. A soft glow appears as the man observes the gift from Bud. A gentle, airy sigh sounds as fireflies dance in the night sky. Back in the woods, Ian remarks on the difficulty of gift-giving. She offers her sincere gratitude to him for all his help. She credits him for the find while he praises her hard work. Ian pauses to ask her one more serious question. He questions why she goes to such lengths for the Grand Duke. Ian notes the man's previous anger and lack of gratitude. A painful memory of the Duke's harsh rejection resurfaces. He remains puzzled by her unwavering commitment to the man. She explains her initial pity and her desire to repay his help. Ian listens intently to her heartfelt and honest explanation. She admits he can be rude, but notes his secret kindness. She believes he is much warmer on the inside than he appears. She realizes she has finally started looking forward to tomorrow. Ian looks down, seemingly troubled and reflective after her confession. A hand clenches as a character feels a strange internal pang. The glowing stars provide a sense of calm and heartfelt peace. The black-haired man rests comfortably, his mind finally at ease. Morning light spills into the grand and ornate room. Sitting at the table, the girl feels a familiar nervous tension. A sharp, distinct click sounds as the door opens wide. The man enters and asks if she has been waiting long. Startled, she assures him she has only just arrived. He leans in close, catching her completely off guard. She mentions that his face is standing much too close. Laughing, she notes how well-rested and handsome he looks to be. The black-haired man looks away, visibly blushing. He expresses that it has been a very long time since he slept so comfortably without waking up once. A pure, joyful laugh escapes her. He notices she is wearing the brooch he gave her. The two enjoy a peaceful meal. A rhythmic thud of footsteps sounds as they move. A sharp scrape sounds from the chair. He suggests eating before the food gets cold. The Duke stands tall and attentive. Radiant happiness fills her radiant face. A soft cling sounds from the dishes. Noting that the food seems to suit her palate, he listens as she enthusiastically confirms how delicious it is. The girl notes that since she is finally at ease, the food is going down much better than yesterday. Hesitating, the Duke mentions there is something about yesterday he did not finish saying. A sudden bang sounds as the door bursts open and an aide frantically calls out to His Highness. The Duke demands to know the reason for such disrespectful behavior. Kneeling, the aide apologizes for the discourtesy but reports that an urgent message has just arrived. The Duke asks for the message details. The man reports the news is from the palace.
A heavy thud echoes as he reveals that Crown Prince Leiden is currently on his way.
A rhythmic clatter sounds from the carriage. A vision of the blonde prince appears. The Duke suspects Leiden is up to something since he is arriving without any prior notice. According to the messenger, the visitor is expected to arrive in less than 2 hours. A sharp slide sounds as he stands.
Apologizing to the princess, the man asks if they can postpone their dinner together until another time.
Laughing, she waves him off and tells him not to worry. Shimmering light marks a scene transition. A rhythmic clack of footsteps sounds as the Duke calls for Liam and receives an immediate answer. He sternly commands that under no circumstances must Princess April be seen by Leiden. A voice suddenly calls for Milady. The red-haired maid anxiously asks if the Duke liked her gift this time. Confirming his positive response, the girl explains he slept soundly, earning praise for her hard work. The maid asks if she has heard the latest news. When told that Crown Prince Leiden is on his way, the blonde girl mentions she heard Liam reporting it earlier. The maid wonders about his sudden urgent business while the girl quietly ponders the situation. She silently hopes that his arrival is not due to any sickness. A moment of sudden realization occurs. The red-haired maid asks why she looks so pale. The girl admits that now that it is mentioned, she thinks she might have a slight fever. Attributing it to overworking yesterday, she is told to rest while the maid goes to get a fever reducer. She offers her thanks and agrees blessed. Clutching her chest, she notes that it feels strangely tight. A dull thud echoes as she wonders if she simply ate too quickly. She decides to go out for fresh air. A rhythmic clack sounds as the maid box. Another maid intercepts Bonita, saying she was just looking for her. She explains Sir Liam requested her presence, as he is shown in the background wearing a satisfied smirk. Bonita looks confused by the sudden request. A sudden rustle sounds as she receives orders to prevent the lady from leaving her room. The man commands that the girl be watched until the crown prince returns to the palace. Bonita wonders why such a task is necessary given the lady's usual behavior. A sharp tap sounds as the man refuses to share details beyond preventing an encounter with the prince. Liam warns that failure to follow orders will result in a threat to her life, causing Bonita to gulp in fear. The crown prince arrives by carriage and is greeted by the mansion staff. The blonde crown prince looks on with a cold, regal expression. A firm thud sounds as the prince greets Kyan. He leans in close, asking if Kyan is curious about the reason for his personal visit. A sudden whoosh sounds as the prince lists the suspicious businesses Kyan has been starting lately. A soft thud sounds as the prince remarks on how busy the duke seems to be. A quick whip sounds as the prince decides to stay the night before departure. A rhythmic snap sounds as Liam leads the way for the royal guest. A sharp grinding sounds as Kyan clenches his jaw in visible irritation. A quick click sounds as Bonita enters the room with medicine, apologizing for her delay.
A sudden gasp sounds as Benita's face fills with shock.
She calls out for Lady April in the empty, silent room.
The Duke offers the prince a humble place to stay. He promises to make better preparations if given notice for future visits.
A heavy thud sounds as the prince sits and asks for the real reason Kayan came. He demands to know the purpose behind the Duke's recent actions.
The prince mentions the massive popularity of a comic book about ghost story safety rules.
The blonde man relaxes as he continues his explanation.
He explains that his mother is obsessively hooked on that specific comic book.
A storyteller performs lines from the book for a captivated noblewoman. Kayan remains silent as the prince says his mother insists on meeting the creator. He notes that as her son, he could not simply stand by. A sudden flinch sounds as the prince mentions the creators were ordered to keep quiet.
A low thrum sounds as the prince admits he used force to uncover the duchy support.
Kayan argues that the duchy only provides monetary support to the business.
A soft shrug sounds as the prince notes this idea did not come from the dupe.
He mentions that the true identity of the general producer remains a mystery.
A soft chuckle sounds as he identifies Grand Duke Vlael as the only one who knows the truth.
A sharp squeeze sounds as a gloved hand clenches into a tight fist.
A soft rustle sounds as the prince confirms his intent to meet the real producer.
He labels the Duke's recent movements as suspicious in various ways.
He points out the unusual nature of the Duke's interest in the tower and comic production.
Kayan asks how the prince can be so certain of his suspicions. The prince claims it is simply his intuition. A soft smirk sounds as the blonde man smiles confidently. He notes that Kayan's current expression makes him even more certain.
A sudden bang sounds as the prince opens a door and asks if Kayan is going out.
Kayan claims he is just going for a walk to relieve his stiff body.
A rhythmic tap sounds as the Duke tells his subordinates to wait and not disturb him.
The Duke asks about the princess's location, and Liam confirms she should be with Benita. A quick patter sounds as someone runs frantically through the hall.
Liam is startled to see Benita running toward them in a pack.
A heavy thud sounds as Bonita collapses to her knees before the Duke.
She tearfully confesses to committing a sin worthy of death.
She reveals the devastating news that the lady has disappeared.
A sharp thud sounds as Kayan's face pales in complete talk. A sharp gasp escapes Kayan as his face pales upon hearing that the young lady has vanished.
Shimmering moonlight bathes the terrace as a lone figure seeks a moment of fresh air.
Clutching her forehead, the girl realizes her fever is worsening and decides she must go inside to rest. A sudden, sharp creak sounds as a blonde man appears in the doorway behind her. Startled, the girl spins around and demands to know who has entered. Standing regally, the blonde man demands that she state her name and rank. Observing his noble attire and commanding tone, the girl realizes she has never seen this person in the mansion before.
A sudden realization strikes her as she wonders if this man could be Crown Prince Raiden.
The blonde man looks down with a cold, superior expression. A soft rustle sounds as the girl curtsies, offering a formal greeting to His Highness. A wave of intense dizziness suddenly overcomes the girl. A heavy thud echoes as she loses consciousness and collapses onto the floor. Breathing heavily, the girl lies helpless and flushed from the severity of her fever. An ornate title card appears, framed by delicate floral designs.
Rushed whispers fill the hallway as the mansion staff reacts to the growing emergency.
The Duke's voice rings out with a stern command to search every corner of the mansion. The maids immediately acknowledge the order to continue the search. A sharp slam echoes as Kayan vents his frustration at being unable to find a single person in the mansion. Liam suggests she might have gone outside, but Kayan notes that the knights would have seen her if she had. The massive mansion stands silent and imposing under the dark night sky. Deep blue shadows stretch across the garden as the search persists.
Kayan remains certain that the lady is still somewhere within the walls of the mansion.
A sharp grit of teeth sounds as the Duke emphasizes the need to find her before Raiden does. The grand architecture of the duchy is illuminated by the pale moonlight. A rhythmic patter of footsteps sounds as Kayan learns she isn't in the library and orders a search of the terrace. A voice suddenly interrupts, asking why they are searching so urgently at such a late hour. A soft bow marks Kayan's stiff greeting as Raiden notes that the Duke is still awake. A heavy thrum of tension fills the air as the prince asks if he is looking for a woman. A confident smirk plays across the prince's face. The two men lock eyes in a moment of intense, silent confrontation. Surrounded by a dark, menacing aura, Kayan demands to know where the girl is right now. Raiden waves a hand dismissively and tells the Duke to calm down. A sharp grind of teeth sounds as Kayan glares, repeating his demand for her location. A low, mocking sound escapes Raiden's lips. The Crown Prince breaks into a sudden and boisterous laugh. Raiden notes it has been a long time since he has seen such a beast-like expression from the Duke. A heavy thud echoes in Kayan's mind as Raiden casually reveals that the girl is currently in his room. A sharp tap sounds as Kayan warns that he won't stay quiet if a finger was laid on her. A frantic patter of footsteps sounds as Kyan sprints down the hallway in a desperate rush. A dark smirk returns to Raiden's face as he notes how interesting Kyan's open display of interest has become.
A sudden bang sounds as Kyan bursts through a door.
A quick patter of footsteps sounds as the Duke rushes to the side of a bed.
The lady lies unconscious and feverish, her face deeply flushed.
A rhythmic walk sounds as Raiden reiterates that the lady is fine, while Kyan looks at her with intense concern.
Kyan fiercely demands to know what was done to her, while Raiden asks how he dares to speak that way. A sudden flinch marks the Duke's reaction as Raiden asks if he is truly yelling at the Crown Prince.
A low thrum of pressure fills the room as Raiden asks if Kyan truly has no fear left.
A frantic patter sounds as Benita and Liam arrive, calling out to the Duke. A desperate cry for the young lady rings out from the doorway. Liam intervenes, pleading with the Duke to calm down during the tense standoff with the prince.
A sharp tap sounds as the aide with glasses bows and offers his apologies to the Crown Prince for his master's earlier rudeness.
Raiden looks down at the girl and asks how she ended up there, and the blonde man explains she fainted, so he moved her to his room.
A soft thrum of pressure fills the air as the dark-haired Duke looks away, silently thinking to himself that this is all his own fault.
He recalls the girl overexerting herself while working on curtains for him. Liam offers to bring knights to move her immediately, but Kyan insists that it is fine.
A firm thud sounds as Kyan picks the unconscious girl up in his arms, announcing his intention to take her himself.
The Duke apologizes and states he will gladly accept whatever punishment he deserves for showing disrespect to His Highness. Raiden notes that while a grave offense was committed, he found the whole ordeal to be quite an entertaining show.
Looking back, the blonde man says he will forgive the Duke with his vast generosity.
A soft rustle sounds as Kyan bows and takes his leave.
Rhythmic footsteps sound as the Duke carries the girl away, followed by his staff, while Raiden watches them depart. Seeing Kyan lose his composure so completely convinces Raiden that the two of them are far from being ordinary acquaintances. The blonde man wonders if that girl is the one in charge of the comics.
He further questions if she could be Kyan's secret lover.
He ponders the possibilities as the scene shifts.
A soft smirk sounds as Raiden watches Kyan leave, still finding the situation equally intriguing.
The Crown Prince finds something strangely familiar about the girl. Everyone gathers around the bed in a grand room where the young lady is resting. Liam tells a crying Manita that her punishment will be determined once the lady wakes up. A soft tap sounds as Kyan places a wet cloth on her forehead, telling Liam there is no need to blame the maid. The Duke takes full responsibility for the day's events and orders everyone to return to their rooms and rest. Liam hopes leaving will ease his guilt slightly and tells Kyan he is counting on him.
A rhythmic rustle sounds as the aide and the maid bow respectfully and take their leave.
A sudden click sounds as the door shuts. Floral imagery frames a wish for April to get well soon.
Kyan leans in close to watch over April as she remains unconscious on the back.
The Duke stares at her.
A soft rustle sounds as the girl starts to stir and wake up.
April opens her eyes to find Kyan's face inches away from hers. Shocked, she cries out, realizing the Grand Duke is right there.
She remembers encountering the Crown Prince and wonders why His Grace is here instead.
She questions if she actually fainted.
She stares at Kyan. She wonders if the Grand Duke's eyelashes were always so long. A soft gulp sounds as she notices his skin is like a newborn baby's without a single pore. A sudden whoosh sounds as she reaches a hairbell. A soft thud sounds as her fingers touch his face. A soft chuckle sounds as Kyan opens his eyes and asks if she is finished admiring his face. A sudden whoosh sounds as April's face flushes a deep red.
A heavy thud echoes as she sits up abruptly, frantically explaining that is not what she meant.
Shouting in panic, she asks what the Grand Duke is doing in someone else's room. A sharp squeak sounds as Kyan asks what she thinks he was doing.
The Duke smirks and asks if she thought he was there all night too.
A soft rustle sounds as the cloth falls from her head while she stares.
A soft tap sounds as she notices the cloth on the bed.
Flustered, she asks if he really took care of her all night.
A sharp flick sounds as Kyan hits her forehead and asks if she is only realizing that now.
A soft rustle sounds as she rubs her forehead while he asks what lewd thoughts she was having. A soft thud sounds as Kyan shifts, deciding that her fantasies mean she has fully recovered. April looks at him with a warm smile. Kyan tells April to prepare herself because she is scheduled to have breakfast with the Crown Prince today. April is visibly stunned by the unexpected announcement. In a flurry of shock, April asks if she is truly expected to attend, while Kyan confirms she is coming with him, and she desperately wonders why. Pointing at herself in disbelief, April hears Kyan explain that the prince specifically came to meet her. A floating thought reminds them that the entire empire is currently obsessed with comic books. Elegant noblewomen are shown engrossed in reading books in a sunlight room. It is revealed that even Her Majesty the Empress has developed an obsession with comic books. Kyan turns to April and mentions that the Empress has several questions regarding the popular books.
Startled, April asks if she can simply avoid the questions or send Ashley to handle the matter instead.
Kian sternly warns that insulting the imperial family is considered a capital crime in their empire.
He adds that failing to answer the Empress properly could lead to innocent artists being accused of deception. Shimmering light and dust motes fill the air during the tense conversation.
April looks on with a deeply worried expression. Kaya notes she might buy time, but since the Crown Prince came personally, there is no option to refuse the meeting.
A warning highlights that the eyes of the imperial family cannot be fooled.
This is the reason she must attend in person. April stands in deep thought, processing the weight of her new responsibility. Clenching her dress, April decides she cannot let her friends get in trouble and tells the Duke she understands. While April worries about revealing her true identity, Kian tells her not to be concerned as they walk. A confident smirk plays across Kian's face. Standing in a grand hall, Kian announces he is late to introduce his companion. He introduces the girl as his distant relative, April Sugar. Raiden stands with his back turned as April offers a formal, deep bow in her ornate blue dress. A soft sound of laughter escapes April as she internally mocks the Duke's naming sense, finding the change from salt to sugar to be quite terrible. Raiden questions the distant relative story while Kian asks if something is wrong. The prince recalls seeing the young lady lying in his bed just the day before. Raiden observes the two of them and remarks that they must share a very special connection. Overwhelmed by the news, April wonders if she truly was in the prince's bed and if the Duke really grabbed him by the collar. She imagines the two men fighting over her and wonders if this is the legendary female protagonist experience. A quick soft tap sounds as Kian alerts her, and a startled April suddenly remembers to offer her formal greetings. She formally greets His Highness the Crown Prince. With a gentle smile, April performs a graceful curtsy. Vibrant flowers frame her elegant movements as she finishes her greeting. Raiden remarks that while he saw her sleeping face yesterday, it is a pleasure to meet her formally now. The Crown Prince extends a welcoming hand toward the table. Raiden looks around and notes that the person he truly wanted to meet has not yet arrived.
Kian gestures to April and clarifies that she is the person responsible for creating the comic books.
Raiden fixes April with an intense and unwavering stare.
A sudden whoosh sounds as the prince invites them to take their seats at the table.
A rhythmic clatter sounds as the breakfast meal is served and prepared.
April admits to herself that despite seeing him before, the prince is undeniably good-looking.
Raiden begins to eat with refined poise. April reminds herself that despite his looks, he is still the man known to readers as Psycho Den. April shakes her head as she recalls the original story, knowing a rotten personality lies hidden behind his dazzling appearance. It is revealed that Raiden and Kian are half-brothers, and the prince always feared the clever Blyle might seize the throne. A heavy silence surrounds a shattered image of a crown, symbolizing their perpetually broken relationship. April wonders if this rivalry is the reason for the Duke's unusually stiff expression. Kian continues to eat in silence, looking cold and distant. April remains quiet and tense as she observes the two men at the table.
A soft smirk plays on Raiden's lips as he looks forward with a cold, knowing expression.
Raiden asks if she is the one responsible for the entire comic book storyline. April flusteredly confirms her role while the prince watches her with a smirk. The blonde man presents an official invitation from the Empress, requesting her presence at the palace. April is visibly panicked by the realization that a palace visit was never part of her plans. Kian watches in silence as the Crown Prince prepares to depart. The Duke looks extremely serious as he contemplates the requirements of the upcoming task. Raiden flashes a confident and knowing smile. April feels the mounting pressure of the imperial family's interest. April wonders if the situation is escalating far beyond her control. The grand and ornate spires of the Salt Kingdom Palace gleam under the sun. A stern command is issued for Ramea to marry Count Ravioli. Ramea stands defiantly before her father, who sits on his elevated throne. Her father reveals that he has already finalized the marriage arrangements with the Count's family.
Ramea objects to such a major life decision being made without her invalid.
She desperately tries to use the management of state affairs as an excuse to delay the wedding.
A heavy thud sounds as her father slams his fist down in frustration.
He mentions an elderly official who has been overworked due to her past administrative mistakes. He blames her for the mess and insists she cannot refuse the marriage. The father calls her name with chilling authority. He demands to know if she truly intends to disobey his direct order. Ramea impulsively lies, claiming she has already promised to marry someone else. She boldly declares that she is going to marry Crown Prince Clayton. Her father roars her full name in a fit of rage. He demands that she grow up and stop living in a fantasy. He warns that the prince only wants to use her as a tool for subjugation. He mentions dark rumors of the prince dealing with sorcery and treachery.
Ramea refuses to believe the insults and passionately defends the prince.
She claims he sent her a letter promising to spend his life with her. Her father sighs and compares her unfavorably to April, who never caused such trouble. Ramea seethes with resentment at the constant comparison to her sister. She shouts that she is not April and demands to be treated as her own person.
Her father ignores her pleas and orders the marriage to proceed immediately.
He commands the guards to seize her and lock her in her room.
He orders a constant watch to ensure she does not escape before the wedding.
A sharp grab sounds as the guards take hold of her arms.
Ramea struggles and screams her refusal as she is forcibly dragged away.
Her desperate cries for her father echo through the grand hall.
Her final plea to be heard is lost in the empty corridor.
The sun continues to shine over the peaceful palace rooftops. Kayan and the prince stand together as the carriage is prepared.
A soft tap sounds as Raiden places a familiar hand on Kayan's shoulder. Raiden leans in close to whisper a command to bring the young lady back safely. Kayan acknowledges the order with a cold and tense expression. Raiden performs a charming and elegant gesture toward April.
He addresses her as Lady April with a dazzling smile.
A sharp tap sounds as the carriage door is finally closed. Rhythmic hoofbeats sound as the prince's carriage departs.
A heavy thud sounds as the final pieces of luggage are secured.
Kayan and April stand together as they prepare for the long journey ahead.
April reassures her crying maid that she has fully recovered and is fine now. Kayan announces that everything is packed and it is time for them to depart. Kayan bids a formal farewell to Bonita, mentioning he expects to see her at the palace soon. A soft bow sounds as Bonita acknowledges the departing lady with a respectful response. April looks up in surprise as a hand suddenly reaches toward her. A soft rustle sounds as Kayan stiffly offers his hand to assist her into the carriage. With a warm and gentle smile, April prepares to accept his gesture of help.
A soft sound of contact follows as she places her hand within his. Rhythmic hoofbeats sound as the carriage begins its journey under a wide blue sky.
The ornate carriage travels down the dusty road with the coachman focused on the path ahead. Inside the carriage, April notes how awkward it feels to be crammed into the small space together.
She observes the Duke, wondering if he is truly unbothered as he appears to sleep soundly.
A sharp tap sounds as Kayan suddenly remarks that her intense staring is going to burn a hole in his face. Startled, April asks if he was actually awake the entire time. A soft sound of amusement escapes Kayan as he admits it is hard to sleep while being watched like that. He jokingly notes that his own face is naturally difficult to look away from, much to April's disbelief. Kayan quickly dismisses his joke and suggests that the princess should try to get some sleep for the long journey ahead. Surprised by his tone, April asks if he is genuinely worried about her right now. A quick tap sounds as an embarrassed Kayan claims he only cares because another collapse would be a hassle for him. A soft rustle sounds as he nervously fiddles with his hands, admitting he could not say what he wanted earlier. Kayan formally expresses his gratitude for the brooch and the blackout curtains she previously gave him. Teasingly, April cups her ear and asks him to speak up because his voice was far too soft to hear.
A flustered Chibi Kayan repeats his thanks with a deeply blushing face.
Playfully continuing her mockery, Chibi April asks him once more what he just said.
Kayan abruptly demands to cancel his previous statement of thanks in a fit of pique.
April laughs gleefully, begging him to be generous and say it just one more time.
Kayan hesitates, struggling to find the right way to address her as princess.
A sudden, loud whoosh sounds as a child darting into the road causes a chaotic scene. A sharp screeching sound follows as the carriage is forced to a violent and sudden halt. A heavy thud sounds as the carriage lurches and the focus shifts to the damaged underside. April groans in pain, finding herself pressed tightly against the Duke's chest after the jolt. A soft gasp sounds as the two realize they are caught in an unexpectedly intimate embrace. Visibly panicked, April offers her deepest and most flustered apologies for the accident. A shaky breath sounds as a blushing Kayan suggests it would be best if she moved off him first. They both sit back, stunned and completely overwhelmed by the sudden physical closeness. The carriage door swings open as the man with glasses asks if they are both unhurt. A soft whoosh sounds as the heat of their blush radiates from their stunned faces. Adjusting his glasses, the attendant obliviously asks if they perhaps bumped into something during the stop. A sharp tap sounds as Kayan tries to regain his dignity, asking what happened to cause the delay. A rhythmic clatter sounds as the group exits the carriage to survey the situation on the road. The village family bows deeply as the father explains that his child suddenly ran in front of the horses. A narrator notes that while the child is fortunately safe, the carriage wheel is in a dire condition. A sharp crack sounds as the focus falls on the shattered and unusable carriage wheel. A soft rustle sounds as the father approaches, expressing his profound regret for the accident. The mother mentions her husband can repair carriages and invites the Duke to stay at their house for a bit. Kayan acknowledges the offer with a stern expression and asks the family to take care of them for the night. The scene shifts to the exterior of the modest and peaceful village house. April looks around the interior with wide, amazed eyes, expressing her genuine surprise. She notes with awe that the dining room is unexpectedly large for a common dwelling. A soft sound of a chair moving follows as the father explains they used to run a small inn there. Chibi versions of the characters discuss how the history as an inn explains the spacious dining hall and many rooms.
Many nights eaten all. A guest thanks them for the meal. April asks if they have any other family members besides the three of them, and the mother replies that it is just them before asking why. April smiles while noting they prepared a large amount of food for only 3 people. April asks if they knew they were coming today, causing the parents to freeze as a sharp freeze sounds. Looking worried, April clarifies that she was joking, but admits it might not have been funny. The mother laughs at the joke while the father explains his wife overcooks and invites them to help themselves. Kyan watches with a cold expression. April thanks them for the food as she prepares to cut her meat. She stares at her fork while wondering what she is actually looking at. A dark presence asks why no one is eating. The villagers sit in an ominous silence. Kyan and April sit together quietly. The mother smiles and expresses her relief that the food suits his taste. The woman suggests that the young lady should try some too, and April nervously agrees. April thinks the meal looks delicious, but notes that she strangely does not feel like eating. Kyan remarks that she ate jerky in the carriage because her mouth was bored, so it makes sense she is full. A chibi April looks confused by the mention of jerky. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as a boot kicks her leg under the table. While Kyan uses a napkin, April wonders if he is making excuses for her. April laughs and agrees that she is not really hungry right now. The mother looks down with a disappointed and nervous expression. Kyan stares silently at his companion. The group enters the darkened hallway. The mother explains that the Duke will use this room. A soft creak sounds as the woman tells the young lady she will sleep in the next room. April thanks the host for the accommodations.
Bonita excitedly exclaims that she is in the room at the end of the hall.
Kyan asks when the carriage will be ready, and the father promises it will be finished by tomorrow morning. Bonita promises that she will come running right away if the young lady needs anything. April reassures the maid that they are all together and nothing could go wrong. A soft bow sounds as the hosts wish their guests a good rest. Kyan addresses the young lady as she prepares to enter her room.
He mentions that she left her hairpin in the dining room earlier.
A quick tap sounds as a simple ribbon is revealed in his palm.
Kyan clears his throat as April stares at her ribbon in surprise. The parents stand in the corridor with dark, glowing eyes. Kyan issues a stern command to be careful. He tells her to get some rest as he prepares to head into his room. April thanks him for finding the hairpin as a soft thud sounds. The ceiling of the room is illuminated. A soft rustle sounds as April lies on the bed while holding her ribbon. A note warns her not to open the door for anyone until morning, even for the writer. April wonders what the warning is supposed to mean since the family seemed normal. A sharp knock sounds on the wooden door.
April calls out to ask who is there.
Benny identifies himself and says his mother sent him with water and towels for tomorrow. A rhythmic step sounds as April says she will open the door in a second. April suddenly stops as a realization hits her. A soft slide sounds as her hand pauses right before touching the door handle. April asks the boy to leave the items outside the door, and Benny readily agrees to her request. A soft creak sounds as April notes that the boy is just a child, yet she still feels a lingering sense of unease. A soft rustle sounds as the blonde princess decides to remain cautious and stay behind the closed door just in case. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as she spots something unusual reflected in her wide blue eyes. A heavy thud sounds as the reddish-brown-haired boy suddenly forces the wooden door wide open. A sinister and dark smile spreads across Benny's face as the atmosphere in the room turns cold. A heavy thud sounds as the boy stands over the startled young lady, oblivious to the promotional notice above. A sharp gasp sounds as April stares up at the intruder with a look of pure shock and terror.
April exclaims that Benny scared her and asks why he hasn't left for his own room yet.
A sudden, loud whoosh sounds as thick purple smoke begins to billow into the room from the corridor. April nervously notes how quiet the house has become, while Benny ominously states that no one will be coming to help. A sinister realization dawns as it is revealed that Benny spiked the dinner food with sleeping pills. April looks up at the boy from her seat on the bed as the situation becomes increasingly dire. Benny notes that everyone must be in a deep sleep by now as the scene shifts to the red-haired maid snoring loudly. A soft rustle sounds as more mysterious smoke continues to drift through the wooden hallways of the inn. A sudden loud whoosh sounds as April confronts Benny at the doorway while the purple haze thickens around them. A soft gasp sounds as a panicked April covers her mouth and asks where all the smoke is coming from. Benny puts on a dark mask and tells the young lady she should have eaten the food like everyone else. A look of horrified realization crosses April's face as she understands the true nature of their hosts. Benny's eyes narrow behind his mask as he mentions there is someone who really wants to meet her tonight. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as April's vision begins to blur and her strength fails.
A rhythmic step sounds as Benny approaches with a rope, promising she will meet them after a long sleep.
A sudden, loud boom sounds as a powerful strike interrupts the kidnapping attempt. A sharp gasp sounds as April cries out in shock at the sudden violence erupting before her. A soft rustle sounds as a familiar voice tells her he only knocked her out briefly and she can open her eyes. A soft gasp sounds as April recognizes Kyan behind his mask while he promises to explain everything later.
A heavy thud sounds as more footsteps echo through the house, adding to the chaotic rescue.
The village parents are shown running toward the commotion with frantic and desperate expressions. A soft rustle sounds as Kyan lifts the blonde princess into his arms, insisting they must leave immediately. April stares up with dazed and unfocused eyes as she is carried through the smoke-filled corridor. A soft sigh sounds as the princess finally loses consciousness and her eyes flutter shut. Rhythmic hoofbeats sound as the scene shifts to the carriage the next morning, where Kyan explains she inhaled too much smoke. April groans in discomfort as the Duke advises her not to push herself and to lie down for a bit longer. April claims she is fine now, but urgently asks what exactly happened at the village house during the night. Kyan explains that a string of bandit crimes involved faking accidents to lure and ambush unsuspecting travelers. Horrified, April asks how they could use a small child for a crime, but Kyan reveals the boy is actually the leader. Kyan explains that the boy actually has Highlander syndrome, making an adult man appear as a 9-year-old child. A sharp gasp sounds as April reels from the shocking news that the innocent-looking child was actually a grown man. Curious and still shaken, April asks Kyan how he was able to stay awake and rescue her from the bandits. She recalls Benny's boast about lacing the dinner food with sleeping pills. April looks at the dark-haired Duke with wide, searching eyes as she waits for his explanation. Kyan casually admits that he only pretended to eat the meal and spit it all out into a napkin. A chibi April looks completely baffled and asks the Duke exactly when he realized something was wrong. Kyan reveals that even before he spoke to them, he suspected they already knew his true identity. A thought bubble recalls the mother's oddly convenient offer to have her husband repair the broken carriage. The village family is shown together, appearing humble and helpful, despite their true malicious intent. Kyan explains it was suspicious that a large meal was already prepared before they even arrived at the house. He further notes that the mother, who acted as the cook, didn't eat a single bite of her own food. April asks why he didn't warn her immediately, and Kyan explains they needed concrete evidence to act safely. Kyan notes she simply couldn't resist the boy's knock, while April defensively insists she told Benny to stay outside. Kyan expresses his relief that the blonde princess was not harmed during the night's events. Kyan suspects Raiden orchestrated the incident to endanger the lady and damage his own reputation. He realizes the prince intended to frame him for failing to bring April back safely. Angered by the petty manipulation, the dark-haired man clenches his fist tightly against his leg. April looks down with a look of deep guilt, feeling like she is nothing more than a burden. Seeking clarification, the princess asks the Duke what he meant by his previous statement. Kyan admits he intended to wait until their return to have this difficult conversation. April stares at him with a look of confused expectation. The Duke proposes that April should return to her original home after they visit the palace. A sharp gasp sounds as April reels from the shocking suggestion that she must leave. April desperately lists reasons to stay, mentioning her unfinished comics and business commitments. She reminds him of her new business partnership as the dark-haired man listens with a pained expression. Panicked, April asks if he is sending her away because she has been a burden to him. Kyan denies her assumption while April insists on knowing the real reason for her dismissal. Kyan warns that her identity cannot remain hidden forever and emphasizes the growing danger. He solemnly states that she is no longer safe remaining by his side. The green-eyed Duke looks away with a heavy heart, determined to protect her from himself.
A moment of silence passes before April makes a counterproposal for a limited stay.
The blonde princess begs for 6 months of time before she leaves of her own accord. She offers to cover all her own living expenses using the revenue from her comics. April stares out the window with a look of quiet, desperate resolve. The scene shifts to the grand palace exterior where a subordinate reports his failure to a hidden master. In a lavish room, a kneeling guard informs Raiden that the attempt to intervene was unsuccessful. The guard looks distressed as he explains that the targets managed to escape the trap. Raiden dismisses the failure, noting the wolves of the north would not be so easily fooled. He swirls his wine while considering the failed ambush to be a sufficient warning. The blonde prince smiles sinisterly while wondering about the consequences for disobedient subordinates. Rhythmic hoofbeats sound as the carriage finally arrives at the grand gates of the royal estate. April looks out at the towering structures, realizing they have reached their destination. The vast and ornate expanse of the Empress's palace is revealed in the bright morning light.
Sunlight glints off the white marble and gold accents of the magnificent royal buildings.
April thinks about the surreal reality of actually arriving at such a historic location.
Cayenne and April stand together before the massive gilded entrance doors. A rhythmic step sounds as the pair walks down a long red carpeted corridor. A soft bow sounds as a maid informs them that only the comic creator may enter. April looks at Cayenne with a mix of nervousness and uncertainty.
The dark-haired man gives her a small, encouraging smile to ease her worries.
The princess nods back at him with a look of renewed confidence.
A rhythmic step sounds as the maid leads April away, leaving Cayenne behind in the hall. A soft click sounds as the maid opens the heavy doors to the audience chamber. April steps forward into the room, her elegant shoes clicking against the polished floor.
She pauses before a grand mirror, taking a moment to steady her racing heart.
A soft creak sounds as April rises quickly when the Empress is formally announced.
A rhythmic step sounds as the regal Empress Oriana Clatan makes her grand entrance. The intricate lace and embroidery of the Empress's lavender gown are shown in detail.
April recalls the Empress's history of ruthlessly eliminating political rivals for her son Raiden.
April notes that the woman's presence is just as cold and imposing as described in the novel.
A soft gulp sounds as the princess tries to maintain her composure under the sharp gaze.
The tall blonde Empress stands before April, her expression unreadable and stern.
The Empress formally addresses the young lady as the chief creator of the popular comic series. The regal Empress Oriana Cleton offers a faint, mysterious smile as she observes the young lady. April looks back with a mixture of awe and trepidation at the powerful woman before her. A soft rustle sounds as the Empress maintains her calm and elegant posture, her smile deepening slightly.
Empress Oriana suggests they discuss matters over a light meal, and a nervous April quickly agrees.
A sudden realization strikes the princess, her blue eyes widening in mounting shock.
A soft hum sounds as the Empress leads the way with an surprisingly upbeat attitude, seemingly in high spirits. Chibi April is completely bewildered, wondering if this cheerful woman is truly the Empress of Blood from the novel. The pair arrives at a massive dining table laden with an overwhelming feast of dozens of dishes. April reflects on the Empress's earlier description of this spread as merely a light meal.
A soft gasp sounds as the blonde princess stares at the extravagant display with an open mouth, completely dazed.
She notes with increasing disbelief that the amount of food seems absolutely endless.
A rhythmic step sounds as a line of faceless maids brings in even more carts overflowing with delicacies.
April sits at the head of the table, feeling tiny amidst the vast mountains of food. The Empress encourages her to eat her fill, mentioning that dessert is also waiting, to which April politely responds. The atmosphere shifts as the Empress mentions there is a specific question she wishes to ask. A soft hum sounds as the blonde woman rests her chin on her hands and fixes April with an intense stare. She asks the young author what she believes the ultimate ending of her comic series will be.
April freezes in her seat, the weight of the question settling heavily upon her. A cold sweat breaks out on her face as she struggles to maintain her composure under the sharp gaze.
April is internally spiraling, frantically trying to decipher the Empress's true intentions behind the question.
The Empress's expression remains pleasant, but she warns that she possesses very little patience and demands a quick answer. A sense of impending doom washes over April as she feels the lethal pressure of the Empress's presence.
A sudden, loud boom sounds as she imagines a terrifying execution, realizing a wrong answer could be fatal.
A soft gasp sounds as the princess clutches her throat, feeling as though she is being suffocated by the tension.
The Empress asks if April intends to keep her waiting despite her sincere request for information. The vast dining room remains silent as the two women face each other across the feast.
April realizes that as the person in this body, the ending is technically already decided by her knowledge.
She thinks that all she really needs to do is repeat the ending she already knows from her previous life.
A soft rustle sounds as her mind drifts back to the simple act of turning pages in a book. A soft rustle sounds as she recalls her past life as a quiet homebody, finding joy in the mystery of a good story.
Chibi April becomes distressed, feeling that revealing the ending would destroy the magic of the unknown for a reader.
A sudden, loud bang sounds as she resolves not to betray her honor as a reader, even if it puts her at risk.
The Empress watches her with unblinking eyes, waiting for the young lady to finally speak.
A soft rustle sounds as April tightly clutches her dress, recognizing the Empress not just as a ruler, but as a devoted reader.
Steadying herself, the blonde princess looks the Empress in the eye and begins her response with an apology. A sharp focus enters the Empress's golden eyes as she hears the first few words of the answer.
A soft gasp sounds as the Empress's expression hardens and she sternly asks April to clarify her statement.
The Empress is visibly stunned as April boldly claims that the story actually has no ending.
A sudden, loud bang sounds as the Empress slams her hand onto the table, demanding how this could make any sense. A soft gasp sounds as the woman begins to tear up, devastated by the idea of the masterpiece being unfinished.
April remains seated, her back to the viewer as she prepares to deliver a deeper explanation.
She explains her philosophy that the characters in a well-written book are just as real as living people. The Empress listens with a somber and focused expression, completely captivated by the young woman's words.
A rhythmic step sounds as April stands up and gestures widely, speaking with newfound passion and conviction.
She continues her theatrical explanation, her blue eyes shining with the sincerity of her belief in her craft.
The Empress is left speechless, her expression shifting from anger to deep admiration for April's perspective.
A rhythmic clap sounds as the camera pulls back to reveal the grand ornate mirror in the hall. The Empress claps her hands and praises April's brilliant mind, admitting that the story is truly unique. A soft gasp sounds as a relieved April thanks her, while her chibi form celebrates her narrow escape. A soft hum sounds as a bright smile lights up the Empress's face and she declares she just got a good idea. The Empress notes that the entire social circle is currently obsessed with April's popular ghost story work. A soft gasp sounds as the Empress suggests creating and selling real-life merchandise, stunning the young author.
The blonde ruler offers to cover all the costs, while an internally weeping chibi April realizes she is trapped.
A sharp focus enters the Empress's eyes as she asks if April truly intends to refuse the offer. Terrified, the princess quickly feigns overwhelming gratitude to avoid any lethal misunderstandings with the powerful woman. The Empress is delighted by the response, while the blonde princess remains in a state of visible shock. A soft clink sounds as the Empress enjoys a meal, her upbeat mood contrasting with April's tense, silent observation. April looks on with wide, watery eyes, desperately wondering what her next move should be in this situation. A sense of impending regret washes over the young woman as she worries she has made a grave mistake. The grand white marble palace stands silent and imposing under the clear, bright morning sky. A lush and ornate garden courtyard is revealed, filled with neatly manicured hedges and blooming flower beds. As night falls, a weary April stretches her arms and sighs, exhausted that the day's events lasted until sunset. A soft groan sounds as the chibi princess finds herself completely drained of energy after the long day. She realizes that despite her fatigue, her sensitive nature and mounting worries are keeping her from falling asleep. Since rest is impossible, April decides to focus her thoughts on brainstorming the mission given by the Empress. A soft sigh sounds as she wanders the grounds, struggling to think of what merchandise would work in this world.
The princess's elegant lace-trimmed gown flows gracefully as she paces through the quiet moonlit garden.
Deep in thought, she mumbles to herself about potential items like blackout curtains while walking through the trees. A sudden, loud gasp sounds as April is startled by a presence and immediately bows to apologize. A soft chuckle sounds as the blonde man smiles down at her, catching the young lady completely by surprise. Raiden greets her with a charming smile, noting their unexpected late-night meeting in the palace garden. A loud laugh sounds as the prince finds her reaction hilarious, much to April's mounting annoyance. He admits that the scared expression she gave him while staring up at him was simply too funny. A soft hum sounds as the golden-eyed man continues to tease her about the shocked look on her face. Raiden notices her clenched fist and playfully asks if it is intended for him, surprising the princess. April quickly hides her hand and denies any hostile intent, while her internal chibi self fumes with indignation. A soft splash sounds from a nearby fountain as the prince asks what she is doing in the garden. He informs her that only his mother is allowed in this area, leaving April worried about the rules. Panicked, she explains she was just taking a walk and got lost, fearing she will get into serious trouble. A soft pop sounds as a clever idea strikes her, and she suggests they both simply overlook each other's presence. Raiden's expression turns serious as he reminds her that not even the crown prince is technically allowed to enter here. A moment of quiet reflection passes as a small chibi April smiles cheerfully amidst the palace grounds. A soft chuckle sounds as the prince notes that he finds her more amusing the more they meet. He points out that he finds it interesting how she doesn't seem intimidated or awkward around the crown prince. A soft hum sounds as April wonders if he is subtly insulting her social skills or actually complimenting her. A sudden realization strikes the princess as her blue eyes widen in surprise at something nearby. She excitedly identifies a night-blooming flower, noting that the Empress's Paris is truly exceptional to have one. April explains that the plant is a powerful herb used to neutralize various types of poison when consumed raw. She mentions that the flower is incredibly rare because it only blooms at night and doesn't grow in colonies.
The princess is amazed to see so many in one place, concluding that money truly is the best solution.
A rhythmic clap sounds as she praises the Empress's impeccable taste, giving an enthusiastic thumbs up. Raiden looks intrigued, admitting his surprise that the young lady is so knowledgeable about medicinal herbs. April nervously claims she only heard the roots were good for skin, while Raiden considers her hidden depths. The prince looks at her thoughtfully, finding it a shame that such an interesting woman is aligned with Blyle. A sudden, wide yawn sounds as April finally feels the overwhelming weight of her exhaustion. She politely suggests that they should head back inside as she is finally ready to fall asleep. Raiden looks slightly crestfallen, seemingly disappointed that their late-night conversation is ending so soon. A soft hum sounds as the prince clenches his hand, wondering why he is feeling a sense of disappointment. He tells her that if she wishes to stay longer, she is welcome to linger a bit more with him.
A soft thud sounds as April bows and departs, noticing that the weather is about to turn into rain.
Raiden stands alone in the moonlit garden as the first raindrops begin to fall.
A gentle rain starts to pitter-patter against the night sky and the blooming garden flowers.
From the shelter of a garden pavilion, the prince watches the downpour through the ornate pillars. A soft hum sounds as he reflects on the beauty of the night, his expression serene. The scene shifts to the next morning, revealing the bright and sunny garden pavilion in full bloom. A soft sigh sounds as a weary April struggles to stay awake while sitting with Blyle. A soft yawn sounds as the blonde princess covers her mouth, exhausted from the night's events.
A voice breaks the silence, asking if she failed to sleep well during her night at the palace.
April admits she struggled to rest because the environment was unfamiliar to her usual sleeping place. A soft rustle sounds as she continues to drift off at the table, her eyelids heavy. A moment of reflection occurs as thoughts arise about the mistake of calling someone so early. A soft hum sounds as the brown-haired man looks skeptical about her excuse of taking a walk. He wonders internally if they were actually wandering the grounds alone together last night. Raiden arrives at the tea table looking refreshed and greets April with a pleasant smile. A soft clink sounds as a teacup is placed onto the table during the morning gathering. The prince explains that his mother was delighted and invited them both to enjoy tea with him. A soft hum sounds as a response bubble thanks him for the royal family's kind invitation. April is relieved to hear the Empress was pleased as the three of them sit together. While drinking her tea, she looks back and forth between the two men across the table. She notes that despite their different hair colors, the two half-brothers look remarkably alike. A soft rustle sounds as a maid serves the crown prince while he leads the conversation. He encourages them to enjoy the rare tea from the continent before it has a chance to get cold. A soft splash sounds as the dark steaming tea is poured into an elegant porcelain cup. Blaya looks at Raiden with a serious and questioning gaze as they continue their meeting. April ponders how she was able to predict the weather just by seeing the moon last night. A soft hum sounds as the prince recalls seeing a halo around the moon, confirming her observation. Raiden looks at her with genuine interest, noting that she seems to be incredibly well-read. April downplays her knowledge, claiming she only likes reading books filled with miscellaneous facts. A soft pulse sounds as Blyle interjects, calling himself her spokesperson and calling her etiquette clueless. He explains he only spoke on her behalf to ensure she didn't accidentally offend the crown prince. April is internally fuming at being called ignorant, but hopes this stops the prince's questions. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Raiden notes the tea has gone cold, startling the princess. A soft hum sounds as she mumbles about tea staying warm, her mind racing with a new idea. A sudden, loud bang sounds as April stands up excitedly, declaring she has found her merchandise. Chibi versions of the group sit in awkward silence as they process her sudden, passionate outburst. A soft sigh sounds as Blyle shakes his head, seemingly embarrassed by the young lady's behavior. A moment of transition occurs as several focused eyes are shown in horizontal frames against dark wallpaper. The grand white marble palace stands proudly under the clear, bright afternoon sky. A rhythmic step sounds as April and Blyle walk down a long, ornate palace hallway together. A sudden, loud shout sounds as Bonita rushes toward April, calling out to her with joy. A soft gasp sounds as the chibi maid tightly hugs April, saying how much she missed her. April looks exhausted while Bonita promises to give her a massage once they reach her room. A soft thud sounds as Blyle suddenly grabs April's wrist, stopping her mid-stride. The brown-haired man looks down at her with a serious and intense expression in his eyes. April is stunned and confused as she realizes he just addressed her by her first name. A soft hum sounds as the red-haired maid looks at him and answers his query. A rhythmic dash sounds as Bonita quickly runs ahead to prepare the room for the weary princess. Blyle suggests that they should head toward the room as well, continuing to lead her along.
A rhythmic step sounds as the two walk through the vast and empty palace corridor together.
The sunny garden courtyard remains quiet and serene as the bright day continues. Walking through the sunny palace grounds, the blonde-haired princess is struck by the beauty of a garden she never knew existed. A soft, quick slide sounds as a hand is suddenly pulled away during their walk.
Blyle looks toward her with a neutral gaze as she pauses to ask a question. April wonders why the brown-haired man insists on using her first name now that they are alone in the garden.
A rhythmic thump-thump sounds as her heart races, frustrated that his casual attitude is making her flustered for no reason. He looks at her with suspicion and asks if she spent time alone with the crown prince the previous day.
While her chibi self nervously explains they simply ended up walking together, the chibi duke demands to know where they went. As they pass through a decorative pavilion, they agree that walking in complete silence would have been more awkward than talking.
A soft sigh sounds as the brown-haired man closes his eyes, seemingly frustrated by the situation. The golden-eyed crown prince reflects on how knowledgeable April seems about herbs and wonders about her diverse education. April questions his odd behavior while Blyle assumes Raiden's interest in her stems from her impressive intelligence.
A sudden whoosh sounds as the wind blows through the trees while he orders her to stay by his side whenever she is in the palace.
Looking intensely at her, he sternly warns her never to walk around the grounds alone again. The princess is confused by his overprotectiveness, but he simply replies that one can never be too careful. He explains his concern that the crown prince might find her a good conversation partner and try to keep her for himself. April stands in a stunned silence as she processes his serious warning and possessive tone. Recalling Raiden's intense nature, she realizes the brown-haired man is right and that the prince could indeed be an obsessive threat. She agrees to follow his lead and stay close to him while he tells her not to worry too much about the situation. He reminds the surprised princess that she is already bound to him by a formal contract regardless of what the crown prince wants. In a vision of the past, April asks for 6 months to prove her worth, refusing to live as a freeloader. Blyle looks on as she confidently offers to pay for her own expenses using the revenue from her comic books. A formal request is made for her to remain in his care only until her temporary stay is over. He explains that her staying at his estate for exactly 6 months was the core condition of their agreement. A confident smile plays on his lips as he notes that not even royal authority can easily overturn a signed contract. While their chibi selves discuss the details, he promises to send over the organized contract paperwork very soon. April claps her hands and asks if there is a specific mineral in the Empire capable of maintaining a constant temperature. A confused chibi April looks up at the Duke as he points out that she should already be the expert on that material. He reminds her of the time she used that very mineral to personally destroy the core of the Mage Tower. In a sudden flashback, she remembers the blue, crystalline mineral known as Parthenium that she shattered. A sudden realization strikes her as she remembers the existence of a Parthenium mine within the territory of the Mage Tower. Excited by the prospect of tower privileges, she suggests a 2-to-1 profit split, clearly favoring herself. With the powerful Empress serving as her financial backer, April realizes she won't even have to worry about the costs of production. She grins with newfound ambition, realizing her plan to create temperature-controlled tumblers is actually becoming a reality. A soft gasp sounds as she clenches her hands in excitement while the brown-haired man watches her from behind. Blyle remains silent as he gazes at her, seemingly intrigued or bewildered by her sudden burst of entrepreneurial energy. The scene shifts as she focuses on preparing merchandise based on the Ghost Duke mission assigned by the Empress. A sudden, loud slam sounds as someone rushes toward the grand mansion under a bright blue sky. Bonita runs into the room with a package from the Mage Tower, causing the blonde princess to cheer with joy. The red-haired maid asks if the container inside is the special temperature-regulating cup that her mistress mentioned before. The two women stand together in the room as April prepares to inspect the contents of the delivery. A soft, quick snap sounds as the princess triumphantly holds up a formal letter that arrived with the package. The document confirms that the Mage Tower accepts her wish token and will provide the requested supply of Parthenium. The letter further states that they have included a sample product made exactly to her specifications for review. While their chibi versions admire the simple-looking cup, April explains that the item is merely a prototype sample. She holds the white and gold tumbler in her hand, pleased with how well their request was executed. The chibi duo discusses the need to test the cup's functionality and finalize the design before starting mass production. Bonita recalls the overwhelming trouble caused by the popularity of the previous blackout curtains as April looks on nervously. The chibi maids and servants look exhausted as they remember staying up for days to pack a mountain of orders. A close-up view shows the elegant gold handle of the newly arrived prototype cup. Half a day passes as the scene shifts to the bright light shining through a large palace window.
The prototype tumbler sits on the table, steam rising from the hot liquid, as April declares the experiment a huge success.
April and Bonita share a joyful high five as they celebrate the tumbler's incredible ability to keep tea from ever getting cold.
Holding the steaming cup, the blonde princess marvels at how the mineral-based material provides heat retention far superior to the products she remembers from Korea. Satisfied with the successful function test, April prepared to finalize the order quantities while she grips a formal document.
A close-up shows the detailed request form that will accompany the product to ensure everything is made to her exact specifications.
Bonita enthusiastically accepts her mistress's instructions, confident that nothing could possibly go wrong with such a perfect plan. While the red-haired maid looks on with a bright smile, April focuses on her next move with quiet determination. Brandishing her paintbrushes, the princess looks forward with a devious grin, eager to start drawing the custom designs for the merchandise. Working diligently, April reflects on how her past experience in a small business has prepared her to handle every task, from accounting to artistic design. The blonde princess clenches her fist with a determined and excited expression, fully committed to her new entrepreneurial vision. Night falls over the capital, where the secret Hessen illegal auction house hides its activities behind a modest facade under a starry sky. Inside the dimly lit hall, a crowd of masked aristocrats gathers, their whispers filling the air with a sense of excitement and anticipation. The masked auctioneer gestures grandly as he announces the arrival of the final and most anticipated highlight item of the night. A soft glow emanates from the glass display case holding the limited edition tumbler, which prominently features a portrait of April and Blyle. The crowd murmurs in awe at the mysterious blue light of the merchandise, comparing the glowing tumbler to a magical lamp. A desperate masked man watches the stage with a trembling hand, his heart pounding as he prepares to bid his entire fortune. He recalls the image of his ailing wife pleading for the tumbler, which reinforces his desperate resolve to win the auction for her sake. Standing before the elite crowd, the auctioneer sets the staggering starting price for the limited edition item at 50 million try. The competition intensifies as prices soar, with bids quickly climbing from 70 million all the way up to 90 million try. Realizing the bid has already surpassed his maximum limits, the man clutches his chest in a moment of agonizing despair. A sudden loud crash sounds as the doors are kicked open, and knights declare everyone under arrest by order of Grand Duke Blyle. Panic strikes the room, and the masked man freezes in terror as he questions why the raid is happening at this exact moment. Chaos erupts in the hall as the Duke's cards begin detaining the wealthy attendees for buying and selling illegal goods. Screams of terror echo through the building as the masked nobles scramble in every direction to find an escape from the knights. The desperate man pushes through the frantic crowd, pleading for others to clear a path so he can flee the scene. A soft, quick bump sounds as he nearly collides with a hooded figure, offering a hurried apology as he continues his escape. Stepping away from the center of the commotion, the man pauses to catch his breath and assess his surroundings. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the man looks down at himself in total disbelief, his eyes widening in shock. Searching his clothes in a frantic panic, the man realizes with horror that his pockets have been completely emptied. He stares toward the hooded figure in the distance, realizing too late that he has been the victim of a professional pickpocket. A sudden firm grip sounds as a knight seizes the man's arm from behind, putting an immediate end to his attempt at flight. The purple-haired knight ignores his protests and sternly orders the guards to take the noble away for detention. Tears stream down the man's face as he pleads for a moment of his time, crying out that he has just lost his entire fortune. A rhythmic rattle sounds as the prisoner transport carriage moves through the dark and misty outskirts of the city. Inside the cramped carriage, the masked man sits despondently among the other detained auction attendees as they are taken away. He addresses the purple-haired knight guarding them, who looks back with a stern gaze and tells him to speak. The man laments that he didn't even buy a single item and that his sick wife is still waiting for him to return home. The knight remains stoic, informing the desperate prisoner that the law allows for no exceptions, even for those of noble birth. He explains that after a brief investigation, the man will likely be released, provided he can pay the required fine. The prisoner despairs further at the mention of a fine, as the knight warns that imperial orders require detaining anyone unable to pay. A sharp creak sounds as the carriage wheel continues to turn, carrying the group further away from the city toward their destination. The scene shifts back to the Grand Palace under a bright, clear sky as a new day of business begins. Looking at the intricate design of the tumbler, Blyle notes how the tiny supply of only 100 items has thrown the empire into a frenzy. The brown-haired Duke turns his serious gaze toward April and asks what her next move will be now that the products are so popular. April scratches her cheek sheepishly, admitting that she isn't entirely sure how to proceed with the unexpected scale of her success. Benita enters the room with a polite bow and offers a respectful greeting to the Grand Duke upon his arrival. Chibi versions of the pair show April pleading with sparkling eyes while the Duke eventually sighs and tells her to do as she wishes. Blyle stands quietly in the bright sunlight, looking remarkably handsome and pensive as he processes the princess's requests. Benita informs them that she has prepared plenty of food and only needs to set another plate to accommodate their guest. The blonde princess stands beside the brown-haired Duke, looking curious while he maintains his composed and slightly aloof demeanor. Benita excitedly points out a detail. April admires the palace's immense beauty. The pair dines under an umbrella. Blyle offers her regular outdoor dining at the residence, confirming that she may eat in the garden as often as she likes once they return. April teases him about his sudden generosity while he sheepishly tells her to eat before the meal gets cold. She playfully vows to hold him to his promise without any takebacks. A sudden, sharp noise distracts him.
Blyle explains that criminals are being taken away, noting the source of the distant commotion while they continue their meal.
April looks uneasy as she watches the guards. Secret gambling halls thrive in the shadows. Blyle recalls the strict palace order to crack down on illegal activities, remembering the bound prisoners kneeling before the throne. April watches the arrests in shop. A prisoner desperately pleads for someone to listen to his story, shouting that his current situation is unfair. April recognizes the man as the desperate attendee from the auction as he looks toward her. She realizes they have shared a glance. Sensing a wave of coming complications, Chibi April worries that something incredibly troublesome is about to happen. She suddenly insists they leave immediately, but Blyle remains confused as he hasn't even finished his food. A soft, quick pop sounds as she frantically stuffs bread into his mouth to hurry him alone. The man continues to beg for an audience as the princess tries to ignore the scene. April pauses, looking down with hesitation. The purple-haired knight maintains a firm grip on the noble prisoner as Blyle watches silently. He whispers a name with deep sorrow. He reaches out with tight hands. The prisoner breaks free from his captors and begins running toward the dining area. The purple-haired knight urgently orders his men to catch the fleeing criminal quickly. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the man's foot catches on the ground. A sudden, heavy thump sounds as he collapses directly in front of April and Blyle. The knight immediately pins the desperate man to the ground to prevent further escape. April admits she was a little startled by the sudden intrusion. The prisoner continues his tearful, desperate appeal for someone to hear him while April looks at him with growing concern. A sudden, loud scream sounds as Chibi April internally despairs over getting involved in more troublesome events. Lyle surprises everyone by commanding the knight to release the man. April steps forward toward the prisoner. She tells the Duke that they would lose nothing by listening to what the man has to say. April reaches out with a devil hand. The man looks up at her with overwhelming gratitude, thanking her for the chance to speak. A quiet moment passes between scenes. Sunlight bathes the palace gardens. The man formally introduces himself as Baron Pavron. He begins to explain the heartbreaking reasons why he chose to participate in the illegal auction. April reflects on how the situation is far more serious and tragic than she had initially imagined. Blyle suggests that she should produce even more tumblers specifically for the residents of the Haunted Duke's territory. April reacts with total stunned disbelief. She realizes the weight of the problem and knows she must find a way to resolve it. April despairs over her lack of rest, wondering when she will ever catch a break from her duties. A new day begins at the palace. A sudden, sharp tap sounds as the Empress mentions hearing rumors that the special tumblers are being mass-produced. The Empress looks on with authority. A sudden, loud slam sounds as April flinches nervously under the Empress's stern gaze. April resolves to personally fix the chaotic mess she has inadvertently created. A speech bubble clarifies that they are not making any more tumblers. April gazes up in stunned silence. She freezes as someone calls out. The golden-eyed Empress warns April about the consequences of lying to her. A sudden, quick tap sounds as a document is dropped onto the table. The Empress asks for an explanation regarding a document about mass-producing merchandise. The two women sit together.
The blonde-haired Empress explains that she has already sent someone to verify the claims.
April clarifies that the new production is for a different item that simply shares the tumbler's function. The Empress listens with a stern expression. April confirms the details with enthusiasm. Looking back at a few days ago, April considers the difficulty of producing more items. She realizes that releasing more limited edition goods would be an act of betrayal to current owners. Chibi April despairs over Baron Pavron's sad story while searching for a way to help him. She suddenly has a bright idea. She recalls how the man desperately wanted to feed his ailing wife warm soup. April looks at the tumbler thoughtfully. The Empress asks about the item's purpose. Her sharp gaze remains fixed on April. April explains that a thermos maintains food temperature for longer because it is airtight. She mentions that the appearance and design are distinctly different from the Empress's current item. The Empress questions why she is mass-producing them instead of keeping them limited. Narration explains that the popularity of the comic led to high-priced reselling and rampant scams. April states that selling thermos bottles with similar functions will help prevent frat. April presents the plans for the merchandise. The Empress asks why those involved couldn't just be arrested. Narration notes that as the Empire's first comic, any scandals could soon ruin the industry's image. April argues that early intervention is necessary to protect the comic book industry's future. The Empress notes that failing to correct the problem early could cause the industry to vanish. She admits that the proposal makes sense to avoid creating a bad precedent. The Empress notes it would reflect well on her as the sponsor of the merchandise. She decides to handle all related issues herself. April reacts with a soft ask. Surrounded by roses, April brightly thanks the Empress for her concern. A newspaper announces the safety rules and release of the thermos bottle named Nadia. Baron Pavron happily asks his wife if she likes the new item. His wife coughs while smiling, expressing how much she loves it. She is touched that it was sent to them before the official release. The couple shares a tender bow-wit.
Tears of joy fall as Pavron vows to do anything for her.
Night falls over the quiet garden. Pavron watches over his sleeping wife.
He worries about his wife's condition worsening lately.
He reflects on how they lost their fortune and her inability to receive medical treatment. The man drinks deeply from a glass.
A sudden heavy slam sounds as he questions the value of his pride.
He resolves to visit his mother as soon as possible and ask for help. The scene shifts to the palace.
A sudden, frantic plea sounds.
A woman bows deeply before April, begging for her help. The blonde Princess April is visibly shaken as she asks the mage to clarify the meaning behind their alarming statement. The gray-haired woman breaks into tears, lamenting that merchants are swarming the magic tower to hoard every thermos as soon as they are produced. An angry mob of peasants wielding pitchforks and torches gathers as cheapy versions of the blonde princess and her companion tremble in fear while the commotion unfolds outside. The blonde princess reels back in shock, uttering a word of pure disbelief at the unfolding chaos. The scene of the raging mob persists, and the blonde princess and her companion remain terrified while the crowd demands results. A simple question of disbelief hangs in the air, indicating the situation has clearly escalated beyond anyone's initial expectations. April admits she had a gut feeling that opportunistic hoarders would eventually surface to cause trouble. The gray-haired woman drops to her knees in despair, arguing that there was no reason to release unlimited stock if it was only going to be exploited. Looking down with a heavy heart, the blonde princess finds her hands clasped by the desperate woman, while a sudden, soft swoosh sounds as the scene tightens around their exchange. With tears streaming down her face, the woman looks at the princess with desperate hope and begs for a final resolution to the problem. April puts on a strained smile and awkwardly assures the woman that she will take care of the matter. Sunlight glimmers off the magnificent palace facade as April decides her first course of action must be to consult with the Grand Duke. The story continues as the elegant title card appears. Voices from another room express deep gratitude for a past kindness, admitting they have no idea how to ever repay such a generous act. Inside the lavish room, the brown-haired Grand Duke Blyle sits across from Baron Fabron and directs the man's thanks toward Lady April instead. Baron Fabron appears anxious as he timidly asks about the outcome of a request he had made previously. Blau remains composed as he responds, noting that the people in question should be arriving at any moment. A sudden, heavy bang sounds as the doors fly open and April rushes into the room, shouting that they are facing a major crisis. April halts her frantic entrance when she notices Baron Fabron is already there and expresses surprise at finding him in the Duke's company. Her attention is drawn to an elegant purple earring, while a sudden, sharp shiver sounds as she wonders why the atmosphere has suddenly become so heavy. A stern noblewoman with dark brown hair and a purple gown looms behind the princess, radiating a wave of oppressive energy. TB April is paralyzed with terror while a sudden loud shriek sounds as she internally screams about being caught off guard by the frightening presence. The noblewoman offers a graceful bow as Blyle stands to greet her and acknowledges the difficulty of her long journey to the palace. The woman looks down with a pained expression and apologizes for her son's shameful behavior, while Blyle kindly tells her not to worry. April studies the woman's incredibly expensive dress and ornate jewelry, wondering about the identity of this clearly high-ranking noblewoman. Baron Fabron addresses the woman with a mixture of relief and fear as he greets his mother after their long separation. The noblewoman maintains a cold gaze while a sudden, quick rustle sounds as she asks to be excused for just one moment. A sudden, sharp crack sounds. The room falls into chaos as the mother delivers a forceful slap to her son for his involvement in illegal auctions, while the Baron begs her to calm down.
April watches the domestic dispute in utter shock, realizing with a start that this powerful-looking woman is actually Baron Fabron's mother. Blyle moves quickly to intervene, and a sudden firm thud sounds as he catches the woman's wrist to prevent her from striking her son again. Blyle calmly addresses the woman as Marchioness Ambrose and urges her to sit down and discuss the matter rationally.
April's eyes widen as the name clicks in her mind, while a sudden, sharp realization dawns as she recognizes the significant figure standing before her.
Surrounded by a floral aura, the true identity of Marchioness Ambrose is revealed as a figure of immense power and reputation.
Steam rises from a pristine white teapot on the table during a quiet transition.
The group sits together for tea while the Marchioness notes that the thermos was inspired by her son's tragic circumstances, and Blyle confirms her assessment. The Marchioness wonders how she can possibly thank the young lady for her kindness, while April replies modestly, stating she only did what was right.
April's blue eye narrows in deep thought while a sudden curious hum sounds as she observes the powerful woman across from her.
April realizes that the woman is the head of the legendary Ambrose Trading Company.
The Marchioness takes a composed sip of her tea while a sudden delicate clink sounds as she sets her cup down.
Narration describes the Ambrose Trading Company as a massive entity with vast capital and a reputation for swift, accurate delivery across the continent. April recalls that even in the original story, this trading company was a famous and extremely important element of the world's economy. A sudden, sheepish sigh sounds as April notes that while the company was famous, her own name was barely mentioned in the original work. She begins to formulate a plan to use the company's vast resources to solve the hoarding problem by ensuring thermoses are distributed efficiently to everyone. The Marchioness's purple eye watches April with keen interest, while a sudden, quiet pause sounds as she gauges the girl's intentions. April feels small under the woman's scrutiny as narration notes how hard it is to believe that this ordinary young girl created such a famous comic book. April gathers her courage and addresses the noblewoman directly to propose a new partnership. With a bright and hopeful expression, the princess prepares to make her pitch for the future of her merchandise. The Marchioness asks for clarification on the proposal, questioning if she is being asked to manage the distribution of the thermos bottles right away. April confirms the request with a determined look and adds that she wants to entrust the company with the distribution of all her future goods as well.
The noblewoman considers the blonde princess's unexpected initiative and asks for the specific conditions of her proposal.
April offers to provide exactly what the Marchioness desires most in exchange for her cooperation.
April notes the noblewoman's search for trade connections with allied nations.
She proposes introducing her to the agent of Count Galbro, a powerful figure in international trade.
The Marchioness asks if the person in question is Lady Ginevra Galbro, and April confirms the identity. The noblewoman formally accepts the deal. She demands a written pledge to secure the appointment with the agent. The Marchioness declares the transaction officially open. In the garden, the noblewoman expresses her son's debt of gratitude while April humbly declines the sentiment. A sudden, sharp yelp sounds as the mother drags her son away by the ear for his past behavior. Blyle and April wave goodbye as the guests depart. April asks the Grand Duke when he first realized the pair were mother and 10.
Blyle recalls a few days prior when Fabron begged him to summon his mother to the palace.
He explains that Fabron severed ties after his mother opposed his marriage. Blyle asks April to clarify the nature of the major crisis she mentioned upon her arrival. The carriage wheels turn rapidly as the pair departs. Inside the carriage, Blyle asks April why her previous confidence has vanished into dejection. He questions why she escalated the situation with such a dramatic proposal to the Marchioness. Chibi April rants about the mages being in trouble because of her and insists she had to intervene. She asks defensively if he is blaming her for the entire situation. She argues that the mess wouldn't exist if he hadn't pressured her to create the tumblers in the first place. Blyle observes that the princess simply cannot ignore those who are in distress. He looks at her softly, noting that her kindness was the same when she helped him. A warm pink aura fills the carriage as they sit together in awkward silence.
April vows to hide in her room and do nothing once the ordeal ends, and Blyle tells her to do as she wishes.
A sudden, loud screech sounds as the carriage brakes. A sudden, crisp click sounds as the carriage door opens. April steps out and gazes up in wonder. The magnificent Galbro estate stands tall under a clear sky. A formal recruitment notice seeks new staff for the ongoing production. A sudden, rhythmic tap sounds as the maid leads April through the halls. April is amazed that the building's scale rivals the Imperial Palace. She feels guilty leaving Blyle in the carriage, but notes Lady Galbro's dislike of strangers. She recalls that the Grand Duke insisted on accompanying her despite her plans to go alone. A sudden, hollow knock sounds as the maid announces the visitor, and the lady invites them inside. April steps into the room, looking around tentatively. She stops in her tracks, eyes wide with shock at what she sees. Lady Geneva Galbro offers a warm welcome to her guest.
April is stunned to find a shelf packed with her comic books and merchandise.
April realizes with a start that Lady Galbro is a massive fan of her work. Lady Galbro questions the request for security forces for the Ambrose Guild, and April confirms it. April explains that access to the distribution network will facilitate the Galbro Guild's expansion. Narration details the Marchionesses' specific need for security forces from the allied nations. As the Guild's delivery sales dominated the empire, they became prime targets for bandits. Bandits frequently raided the convoys, leading to unsustainable compensation costs. A sudden, low groan sounds as the lady listens to the explanation about using cheaper manpower to avoid deficits. April grows anxious as the noblewoman remains silent and studies her closely. A sudden, wet splutter sounds as Lady Galbro spits out her tea and declares her deep disappointment.
April is frozen in terror as tea drips down her face.
Lady Galbro asks why April chose to hide such a thing from her.
Lady Galbro demands to know why April kept her secret identity as a famous author hidden for so long.
April is visibly stunned to realize her secret has been completely uncovered. The lady recounts their extensive correspondence as Chibi April recalls the exhausting work of writing so many letters.
Lady Galbro explains that April's unique personal flair in the story and dialogue gave her away immediately.
She adds that the comics publication within the Blail Grand Duchy served as the final confirmation of her suspicions. April realizes that her past mention of staying in the Grand Duchy during a construction project was a major oversight.
Lady Galbro admits she expected April's visit to be the moment she would finally reveal herself as the author.
April apologetically insists that she never had any intention of being intentionally deceptive. She explains that keeping her role as the head producer a secret was a necessary precaution. April admits she had no idea the noblewoman was such a dedicated and passionate fan of her work. She observes that the reclusive Lady Galbro likely lacks social connections and friends.
April realizes their frequent letters led the lady to believe they shared a deep personal bond.
A sudden sharp realization sounds as April experiences a moment of inspiration.
April offers a warm and reassuring smile as a new plan to help the lady begins to take shape.
Lady Galbro asks for the identity of the person April intends to introduce into their partnership.
A sudden, playful hum sounds as the princess beams with a clever idea to expand her network. A formal notice confirms that a monumental contract has been signed between the Ambrose and Galbro guilds. Two hands join in a firm shake to seal the official and powerful new business alliance. The two high-ranking noblewomen sit together to discuss their shared interests and the future of their collaboration.
Lady Galbro looks genuinely relaxed and happy as she finally finds someone to share her passion with.
Narration notes that the joy of being a fan is doubled when there is a companion to share the experience. A sudden quiet gulp sounds as April watches the new friends while taking a calm sip of tea. From behind the closed doors, Lady Galbro gives the order to allow a new visitor to enter. Marchioness Ambrose expresses her profound gratitude to April for resolving the difficult distribution problem.
She thanks the young lady for her kindness and suggesting that the Grand Duke help her estranged son.
A sudden, heavy pause sounds as the mother speaks fondly of her cherished son, James.
April is paralyzed with shock upon discovering that Baron Fabron's real name is actually James.
The Marchioness laments the years of separation and the lack of communication that followed her son's departure. She catches herself and apologizes for burdening the princess with her private family troubles and regrets. A sudden, firm squeeze sounds as the woman takes April's hands and offers her unconditional future support. The Marchioness offers a rare and gentle smile, showing her deep trust in the blonde princess. April looks away with a troubled and pensive expression as she processes the weight of the mother's words. A sudden, weary sigh sounds as April prepares for her long residency at the Imperial Palace to conclude. She gazes out at the garden, admitting that it feels lonely without the Grand Duke's constant presence nearby. She recalls Bleal's thoughtful gesture of giving her the entire night to herself before her departure. Despite the peaceful evening, the memory of the Marchioness's sad expression continues to haunt her thoughts. April realizes that the name James belongs to a character destined for a tragic end in the original novel. A vision of a lonely grave appears as narration describes the future death of James and his wife due to poverty. The story foretells that the Marchioness will only learn of the tragedy after it is far too late to intervene.
April struggles with the fear that interfering with the story's events could lead to unknown consequences.
Under the bright moon, she weighs her desire to preserve the original plot against her sympathy for the mother. April shakes off her hesitation and resolves to save them first and deal with the fallout later. She recalls that in the original timeline, the heroine Lamea was the one who earned the Marchioness's favor.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as April is startled by a presence in the quiet garden. She turns around in a panic to see a mysterious figure watching her from the shadows.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as April offers a formal and respectful curtsy to the high-ranking visitor.
April looks up in fear as she is addressed with chilling coldness by the man before her.
The blonde-haired crown prince looms over her with a suspicious gaze and demands to know her true identity.
April is frozen in terror as the prince's intense, glowing eyes seem to pierce right through her.
A promotional page invites readers to join the community and highlights opportunities for new staff members.
April is caught off guard as she is addressed formally by her title. The blonde-haired crown prince questions her true identity with a piercing gaze.
April is paralyzed with fear by the overwhelming intensity of the man's presence.
She attempts to feign confusion, asking what he means by his strange inquiry.
A sudden, quiet gulp sounds as April struggles to maintain her composure. She nervously wonders if the man overheard her talking to herself in the garden. The crown prince observes her reaction with a subtle and knowing smirk. He questions which of her many personas represents her actual self.
Narration reveals she was described as a socially maladjusted person ignorant of etiquette.
April looks visibly stung and bewildered by the harsh characterization of her personality.
The prince looks back over his shoulder with a cold and calculating smile.
A sudden, rhythmic tap sounds as the man begins to walk away. He notes that her appearance gives him a strange and unsettling sense of familiarity.
April recalls the prince's terrifying obsession and the imprisonment of the original heroine, Ramea.
She realizes with horror that her resemblance to her half-sister was a dangerous oversight.
She concludes that a family resemblance is natural, despite being only half-sisters.
The prince admits he has a strong preference for people of talent and capability.
He expresses a desire to keep all such useful individuals close to him. April confirms that her departure for the Grand Duchy is scheduled for the following day.
The prince extends an invitation for her to remain at the palace as his companion. He urges her to consider the offer, suggesting a life by his side is desirable. April begins to respond, but hesitates, her face shadowed by deep uncertainty. A bright and blinding light fills the scene as the tense encounter concludes. A sudden, rhythmic tap sounds as April makes her way back through the palace. She remains in a daze, processing the weight of the prince's unexpected proposal. A sudden, quiet thump sounds as April accidentally collides with someone in her path.
She rubs her head in pain, wondering why she hit something as hard as a rock.
The black-haired Grand Duke questions why she is wandering the grounds so late at night. Chibi April asks if he was waiting for her, and Chibi Blyle flatly denies it. He turns away, coldly stating that he was merely observing her return.
April smiles knowingly, convinced that he was indeed waiting for her to arrive.
A sudden, heavy pause sounds as she mentions her meeting with the Crown Prince. Blyle reacts with immediate alarm, demanding to know where and when they met.
April explains the encounter in the garden and the invitation to stay at the palace.
Blyle watches her intently, asking for her final decision on the matter.
April looks him in the eye as she prepares to reveal her response.
Chibi April joyfully declares that she could not possibly accept the prince's offer.
She explains that her contract requires her to finish the comic series at the Grand Duchy.
Blyle smirks, amused that the prince must view him as a ruthless and demanding boss.
April beams with pride, seeking validation for her loyalty and clever decision. A sudden soft rustle sounds as a hand is placed gently on her head. A sudden soft rustle sounds as April enjoys the comforting and affectionate head pat.
Blyle offers a warm and rare smile, confirming that she did a good job.
The scene shifts to the Grand Duke's residence as a new day begins.
April collapses onto her bed with a heavy sigh of exhaustion while Blyle questions her state.
The purple-haired knight stands by the window watching the tired princess.
April sits up and insists that nothing serious is bothering her despite her fatigue.
The red-haired maid has fallen asleep at the table while waiting for her lady.
The knight encourages her to speak her mind, suggesting it will provide much-needed relief.
April begins to recount her recent acquaintance with a specific baron she met.
The red-haired maid sits alone, looking deeply troubled.
A heavy silence hangs over the princess's empty bedroom.
A handwritten note explains that April has left with Ian.
A sudden, sharp tack sounds as a boot strikes the ground. Bright light catches the elegant folds of a flowing dress. Ian catches April in his arms during a moment of weakness.
The purple-haired man asks if the princess is feeling all right.
A sudden, nauseous ugh, bleh sounds from the dizzy princess. Ian supports April as she rests against a large tree. April looks sick as she swears off teleportation magic forever.
Ian explains that teleportation is necessary for their return journey.
April reacts with a face of pure, wide-eyed horror.
The dilapidated stone exterior of Baron Fabron's residence appears.
April peeks through the doorway and calls out into the house.
A sudden, long keek sounds as they enter the dark hall. April wonders if anyone truly lives in this cold, dusty place. April questions how a home can feel so hauntingly cold.
Ian offers a subtle and knowing smirk at her reaction.
A strange object begins to tumble down the dusty staircase. The mysterious round item rolls across the floor toward them. A human skull comes to a stop at Ian's boot. A sudden, piercing kiak sounds as the skull's eyes blow. Baron Fabron rushes over, apologizing for the terrifying loud scream. April looks up with a flustered and confused expression. Ian holds April in a bridal carry and questions her. The skull-shaped lamp glows with a vibrant, eerie red light. The Baron explains that his wife loves ghost stories and horror. April and Ian stare blankly as the Baron continues talking. Exhaustion is visible in the Baron's deeply sunken dark eyes. April observes that the Baron looks incredibly pale and unwell. Fabron admits he stayed up all night reviewing debt notices. Ian and April share a silent, meaningful glance with one another. Ian sets down a large basket of fresh, colorful fruit. Fabron notes that his wife is a dedicated fan of April's. A sudden, long keek sounds as the Baron opens a door.
A harsh and painful cough echoes from within the room.
The Baroness greets the creator of the famous ghost story. April confirms her identity while noting the lady looks healthy. A sudden, violent gut-ack sounds as the lady coughed again. Fabron urges his wife to drink some water before speaking. A sudden, deep gulp sounds as the lady drinks quickly. The lady expresses her deep affection for the character Benedict. Sunlight filters through the lush leaves of a tall tree. The golden glow of the sun fills the peaceful sky. Dark shadows loom over April and Ian during the lecture.
Ian whispers that they should finish before the lady collapses.
April claps and thanks the lady for her wonderful ideas. The smiling Baroness invites the princess to ask her anything. April asks if she experiences any other critical medical symptoms. The Baroness confirms that only the persistent cough remains a problem. April recognizes that the symptoms are identical to those experienced by a specific king in the past. Narration explains that 2 years prior, a king suffered similarly, throwing his entire kingdom into a state of total chaos. Every physician and herb was utilized, but they were on the verge of giving up after failing to identify the source of the ailment. A vision of a skeleton reveals that the supposed incurable disease was actually nothing more than a simple cracked rib. April deduces that the frequent coughing masked the specific pain of the injury, preventing an early and accurate diagnosis. She looks over at the coughing lady and wonders if she is suffering from the exact same overlooked condition. A sudden soft rustle sounds as Ian asks for permission to examine her, and the lady agrees between her persistent coughs. A sudden soft thump sounds as the lady lies down straight on the bed as requested by the purple-haired man. A sudden quiet press sounds as Ian explains he will apply light pressure and asks her to report any pain. April watches intently, hoping Ian is reaching the same conclusion as the lady winces and confirms that it indeed hurts. A sudden, formal bow sounds as Ian thanks the lady for her cooperation and tells her she may sit up again. Ian looks toward the couple and calmly informs them that the lady likely has a cracked hip. April whispers to ask when he first suspected the injury, and Ian admits his suspicion came from his own past experience. The Baron looks on with hope and disbelief, asking if this means his wife's condition is not actually terminal. Ian clarifies that a high-ranking priest is required for healing, noting that such services are extremely expensive. A sudden, silent tear sounds as the Baron realizes he cannot afford the necessary treatment for his beloved wife. April tries to calm the frantic man while a mental note highlights the desperate need for money. April offers a mysterious and knowing smile. The scene shifts to a grand and sunlit palace surrounded by blooming blue roses. The Marchioness expresses shock, questioning if her youngest daughter-in-law really just has a cracked rib instead of a fatal illness. April explains that a physician must confirm it first and then addresses the Marchioness's inquiry regarding the proper treatment method. April states that the only solution is to seek treatment from a priest possessing a high level of divine power. The Marquise looks down sadly, noting that her son and his wife lack the financial means to hire such a priest. She questions why April is sharing this information with her while they sit in the lavish drawing room. A bold statement reveals that April is well aware of the deep regret the Marchioness feels regarding her final words to her son. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the Marchioness learns the lady's family has nothing to eat and that the Baron has been starving himself. A sudden, heavy sigh sounds as the Marchioness leans back in distress, regretting that she only scolded her son for asking for money. April proposes hiring the Baron's wife as a new story writer for her popular ghost story series. A sudden, startled spark sounds as the Marchioness is surprised to hear about her daughter-in-law's hidden talents. April beams, expressing a desire to bring the lady in immediately upon her recovery because her creative ideas are so impressive. She explains that the lady's story was previously cut short but was excellent, then offers a formal proposal to the Marchioness.
As a specific condition of the deal, April offers to grant the Marchioness a portion of the comic's story shares.
A sudden, soft chuckle sounds as April realizes that by calling it an investment, she is giving the proud woman a reason to help.
April offers a bright and satisfied smile. A close view shows delicate white tulips and ornate lace fabric.
A sudden, heavy sigh sounds as the Marchioness agrees to invest, though she feels she is once again deeply indebted to April.
A sudden, quiet splash sounds as the Marchioness resolves to immediately find an outstanding physician and a high-ranking priest.
She smiles warmly, justifying her actions by stating that the writer must be healthy for the story to continue smoothly.
A sudden, joyful laugh sounds as April celebrates the successful outcome of her plan.
Sunlight bathes the majestic palace as the day progresses peacefully.
Narration confirms the diagnosis, explaining that the fractured rib had dangerously pierced the lady's lung.
Thanks to the generous support of the Marchioness, the medical treatment proceeded without any further complications.
A sudden bright flash sounds as a high-ranking priest personally visits the home to perform the healing magic.
The terrible coughing incident that had plagued the Baroness finally comes to a successful end. A sudden, quiet creak sounds as April gazes out the window, contemplating her next move in the story. A sudden bright spark sounds as she determines that her primary objective now is to recruit more talent.
A decorative title card features elegant text and a silhouette of a girl in a birdcage.
An overhead view shows April, the Baron, and the Baroness sitting together for a formal tea service.
The Baron expresses his profound gratitude for the princess visiting their home once again. April beams with happiness, noting how wonderful it is to see that the Baroness has recovered so well.
Baron Fabron notes that Marchioness Ambrose provided them with substantial assistance.
The brown-haired man expresses his gratitude to April, who humbly asks him not to mention it. April asks the Baroness if she remembers the formal offer she proposed previously.
The lady recalls the suggestion to join the production of a specific story once she regained her health. April confirms that she is visiting today to receive a definitive answer to that proposal.
The princess waits with a bright and expectant expression on her face.
The Baroness admits she initially thought the offer was merely a way to provide encouragement.
April praises the lady for her fresh ideas and her deep understanding of the creative work.
From an overhead view, April formally asks the lady to join their team.
The Baroness offers a warm and joyful smile, signaling her acceptance.
Baron Fabron celebrates his wife's success as she reacts happily to the news.
April watches the couple with a peaceful and satisfied expression.
Wispy white clouds drift across a clear and bright blue sky.
A carriage travels along a dirt path through a lush and green landscape.
Inside the carriage, April admits she was secretly worried about a possible rejection.
The purple-haired man asks the princess if she is feeling all right.
April stares ahead with wide, pale eyes and a look of deep discomfort.
April attributes her nausea to motion sickness despite choosing to avoid teleportation. A stylized visual shows the dizzy princess being watched by her concerned red-haired maid. April reflects on her recent exhaustion and the fact that she has barely slept.
She realizes that she has not taken a single day off from her duties lately. The princess acknowledges that she failed to realize her personal projects were also demanding work. Bonita urges April to pace herself and rest to avoid another physical collapse.
April promises to catch up on her missed sleep as soon as they return home. Ian remains silent as he listens to the exchange between the two women.
A sudden, sharp jolt sounds as the carriage wheel strikes a rough patch in the road.
April informs the maid that she will close her eyes for a while until they arrive.
The red-haired maid invites the princess to lie down and rest on her lap. April settles down and quickly drifts into a deep sleep.
Ian watches the sleeping princess with a focused and serious gaze.
An overhead view shows the carriage coming to a stop at the palace gates.
Bonita informs the princess of their arrival while Ian enters the carriage.
The maid observes that the princess is sleeping far more soundly than usual. A look of worry crosses the maid's face as she tries to rouse April.
A sudden, heavy thud sounds as the unconscious princess slumps forward, shocking the purple-haired man.
A sudden, quick tap sounds as a boot strikes the carriage floor.
Ian moves with lightning speed to catch the falling princess in his arms.
Bonita cries out in distress as she watches the purple-haired man hold the unresponsive girl.
April's eyes slowly open as she recognizes the ceiling of a familiar room. She looks around in shock, realizing she is back in her own bedroom.
April sits up in bed, confused about how she got there after being in the carriage.
A sudden, desperate clang sounds as Bonita throws her arms around the princess while sobbing. The maid explains through her tears that she truly thought the princess was going to die. April tries to laugh off the concern, questioning why anyone would think she was dying. A serious and cold statement reveals that her situation was indeed life-threatening.
Ian stands by the bed with his arms crossed and a grim expression.
April looks up at him with a flustered and confused expression. An elderly doctor informs April that she nearly perished from severe overwork. A sudden, cold shiver sounds as April stares in stunned silence at the diagnosis. The physician asks if she has recently suffered from frequent nausea or intense headaches.
April looks at her clasped hands, realizing she had mistakenly dismissed her condition as mere motion sickness.
The doctor explains that her symptoms were actually warning signals that her internal physical balance was collapsing.
The elderly physician informs her that accumulated fatigue has weakened her body to the point where it cannot recover on its own.
April stares into the distance with a look of pure terror, horrified by the thought that she almost died from overwork a second time.
After the doctor prescribes strict rest and a healthy routine, Ian thanks him for his work and accepts the recovery plan.
Ian turns his gaze away as the red-haired maid watches him with a look of deep concern and surprise. The physician announces his departure while Bonita looks on with a troubled expression. April's wide, trembling eyes show her internal panic as Ian calls out her name to snap her out of her daze.
Ian observes that she looks deeply shaken, and April can only offer a weak and startled response. April insists that she has simply been too busy lately and promises to be more careful with her health moving forward.
Ian looks at the princess with a grim and unwavering expression, telling her that simply being careful is no longer enough to fix the damage. The purple-haired man formally commands April to step away from all of her responsibilities for a while. April reacts with shock and disbelief, questioning what will happen to the production of her comic and merchandise if she stops now.
Ian informs her that he has already arranged for department heads to communicate directly with the maid to bypass her involvement.
He adds that the Marchioness has agreed to oversee the coordination, ensuring that project speed and security will not be compromised. April slumps on the bed, feeling dejected as she continues to fret over what will happen in her absence. A tense and heavy atmosphere settles between the two as Ian remains silent, his face partially shadowed.
Ian's voice cuts through the darkness, asking if she still fails to grasp the severity of her situation.
Ian reveals that her breathing actually stopped and she nearly died, then walks away while remarking that she seems to value work over her own life. He stops and turns back slightly, stating firmly that he cannot simply leave her in this state. A sudden, sharp slam sounds as Ian departs the room and shuts the door behind him. April is left alone, staring ahead with tear-filled eyes as the weight of her brush with death finally sinks in.